Copies of the local law are available for viewing at the Clerk of the Board's office, County Office Building, Cooperstown, New York, during regular business hours. Dated June 28, 2018, Carol D. McGovern, Clerk of the Board of Representatives, Otsego County, New York.
Anyone wishing to speak on local law?
Yeah, I have something to say about it. Do I use the podium? Yeah? It appears that we are running out of candidates within the county that want these jobs now. So we're going to have to hunt wherever we go. I'm also wondering if we have a new, perhaps potentially a new sheriff coming in, how he may feel about that. It's pretty hard when you live outside this county to come and work here. In our department, they've done that, and it's very hard on the person that's doing that. Of course, there's on-call work to do in the field of caseworking. So I guess we're going to do what we need to do. Thank you for the new podium. And proceed on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, I guess we will close the hearing. And call it, call the order of the regular meeting of the Board of Representatives for July. Roll call of members.
Frazier?
Here.
Farwell? Here. Clark? Here. Stammel?
Here.
Kennedy? Here. Overriker? Bliss?
Here.
Marietta?
Here.
McCarty?
Here.
Wilbur? Koenig?
Here.
Martini? Here. Lappin? Shannon? Here.
Everyone, please rise to the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Privilege of the floor. Anyone wishing to speak? Sandell.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Jello. I'm not speaking as an employee. I'm speaking as an American citizen and resident of Otsego County. I lost my home in 2014, and I have been since September of 2014 asking for a review of the sale and transfer of 104 Filburn Road. That is where I lived, and I have, under the kindness of Mr. Aaron's, a place to stay right now, but it's not the same. I have asked to go before an ethics committee, and I'm stymied as to why it hasn't happened as of yet. And I'm also very troubled that one of the members of the ethics board happens to be a friend of one of the board members. And that self-same board member has a husband who's going to be running for sheriff if all things go the way they hope. I find it to be a little bit duplicitous and a little bit, I don't know, unhealthy to have something so close with one another. We should have people that have absolutely nothing to do with being a legislator, an elected official. It should be someone that is out in the community that doesn't have an axe to grind with anyone. Now, I asked the treasurer way back then to please allow me to pay my taxes. He had sole discretion. He told me it was against the law, but I don't know how it could be against the law if other counties allow you to pay your taxes up until the day of the auction. I have seen nothing in the newspapers this month stating when the last day is for these individuals to pay their taxes before the county takes their home. We have volumes of books that are called the proceedings of the board, and yet only a few have them on their desks. We don't have any of the proceedings of the tax auctions. Nobody knows who bought, how much, and who was the previous owner. It's stated that we don't need to do that anymore because we just don't have to. It's not part of the law. It's not required. But for decades before, it was. Now I'm asking, once again, to go before the ethics board as I come here, to have it reviewed, that it was sold to a member of the management team of this county. That's what I'm asking, requesting, in all due respect. I'm very happy that I have this opportunity and the privilege of your time. But I state for the record, clearly, I wish to pay my taxes, my back taxes. Dan Kroll told me, no, you can't, and proceeded on his sole discretion to just take everything I had, everything, along with Bob Force as well. I hope you had a happy holiday yesterday. It's been hot. Oh, and by the way, the air conditioning in this building truly needs to be repaired. Some of the people up on the third floor are in very hot rooms. I'm a Nordic girl, so this is like really horrible for me anyway, but consider putting in perhaps a new air conditioning system for our workers. If you want to speak with me about it privately, it's all right. You know, I'm not saying any secrets. The third floor, in the back by the CPS units are horrible. They're up into 80s. I don't know today, but last week it was. God bless you, and remember, have compassion. Punishment is not the answer. Compassion is to put yourself in the shoes of someone who asked for your help. Can you do that? I think you can. Have a good day.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I guess no one has anything to say, but I always have something to say, especially since Maria's home was taken away from her. It was about exactly this time of the year, a few years back, and she realized, oh my gosh, that's a picture of my house in this magazine. I got to get down and pay. No, you won't take the money. Now, Fulton County just had their sale. They have a removed parcel list, about 8 parcels on that. Greene County has removal list. We have HORIF auctions. Beware this year, they're having problems. They had to cancel Sullivan's auction. Sullivan County, it's a big auction. They're going in behind us. When Fulton County was having their auction, the website was a mess. The properties didn't correspond with the information. So I hold up this for Auctions International, where it's a 6% buyer's premium instead of 10. We use Auctions International, as you know, for selling some of our automobiles. And by the way, when we're selling an automobile or a truck, the mechanics at the garage aren't allowed to bid. As in the sale of the homes here, we have certain people in the Treasury and real property that are now allowed to bid. I think it's obvious probably that maybe nobody should be bidding. That's the way it is here with Auctions International. It's not them with this process, but this one happens to be one on property that the Canal Corporation is selling. And it spells it out so clearly here that nobody related or involved, even family members, can be bidding on this stuff according to the public officer's law. This county has not been compliant with that. So what Maria has been asking is her day of justice to be heard. And you're hearing it now. I think this time, and this has gone on for many, many months, literally hours of this, while I've watched the process change dramatically, the year after Maria, one of our board members, Mr. Cook, Nick, was kind enough to save a widow's home. That can still happen. Now at this point, I think we're in the cutoff date, no money after last Friday. Yet when I went by the treasurer's office, it looked like they were taking money there still. So we have no idea what's going on. There's been no notices in the paper that I saw, and I've been more or less watching. Maybe we don't want to notify things because ahead of time, sometimes people go and they do what's called deed grabbing. And then you go to the owner directly and you purchase it, and the county is then kind of left out, but at least the tax gets paid. It's a dirty process. This didn't have to happen. Unwind this through rescission. That's the word. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes, which are available online.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Presentation of petitions.
The only thing I have, excuse me, is the May report for ATI program services rendered by Catholic Charities.
Okay, and we'll move on to a special presentation, Mr. Flink from Southern Tier Solar.
Good morning. Thanks very much. I am a representative of a nonprofit called the Binghamton Regional Sustainability Coalition, and our energy program is Southern Tier Solar Works. And the main thing I'm here today to talk with you about is community shared solar, although I will mention a couple of opportunities that are coming down the pike in the future. Next, please. So as I mentioned, Southern Tier Solar Works is our energy program. We've primarily focused on residential and small commercial solar education, outreach, and promotion. So to be clear, we're a nonprofit. We do not put things on roofs or on poles. We work with competitively selected partners, and I'll talk about that process, who do those things. We're largely funded through the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, NYSERDA. And one of the reasons I came to you today is that Karen and I had some conversations around clean energy communities. I know you've already got your award, and congratulations and good work. But y'all want to do more, and that's great. So here I am. Another thing that I know that you're about to officially join is CPACE, the Energy Improvement Corporation, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, which allows commercial buildings owned by nonprofits or private entities to be able to do energy upgrades, pay them on the tax bill, and not have any effect on credit line and so forth. At the Q&A, if there's interest, I have some ideas about how that program could be promoted throughout the region to make sure that both vendors and customers know about it. Heat Smart Southern Tier East, we're not doing that here because folks from OCA, who are going to talk after me, are doing that. It's a very exciting statewide program, and I won't say another word about it. Let them talk about that. Just two other things that are aspirational. Clean Energy Careers Pathways program. This would be a K to Gray educational and workforce development program. We're hoping to get funding through NYSERDA through a PON that's coming out later this month to really take advantage of the growing demand in the clean energy field as well as in technical and trades. Again, I can mention things during Q&A, and I'll just skip over one step and go to the next slide, please. So before talking about community solar, I just want to make clear what our role is and what Solarize is. Is there anyone in this room who knows already what Solarize is? Raise your hand. Okay, got a little bit here. So the basic concept of Solarize is to rapidly scale a market in solar, but what we're going to be experimenting with in the not too distant future is also heat pumps and energy efficiency. And there's four aspects to it. One is an organization that is staffed, could be government, could be nonprofit, in this case that's us, that leads the effort of boots on the ground, if you will. We partner with community leaders, and community leaders could be someone like Karen, could be a business leader, someone like Ray Pucci, who's the head of the chamber in Delaware County, pastor, really anyone who sees and understands the value of clean energy as an economic driver, a job driver, an environmental matter, and so forth, and who is someone with esteem and good connections in the community that could bring people out. The third element is a time-delimited campaign, and we're in the midst of that now. Traditionally, solarized campaigns have been focused on on-site residential solar, on your roof, in your yard, small. This year, NYSERDA has given us two choices. You could either do that or community shared solar, and the latter is what we chose, and that's what I'll get into in just a sec here. The last piece is competitive selection of partners. So we competitively selected developers who submitted bids to us from both this load zone and load zone C, which is basically over in Broome, Shenango, Delaware. Broome, Tioga for us. Shenango, Delaware, and Otsego are in load zone E for NYSEG. And we selected Delaware River Solar as our partner in this area. And I realize I've been not telling you to click through. So if you could click through, no, don't apologize. I'm the one who should be sorry. And there is a deadline, which is September 30th. So essentially, people can come to the events that we have, such as on the 31st, we're going to be there at 6 o'clock at Origins Cafe, and on August 9th at 6 o'clock at Green Earth in Oneonta, and learn everything they need to learn to decide whether they want to take the next step, meet the developer partner, and if they like what they see, they can get a contract. Next, please. Next, please. So I'm going to fly through these a bit. When we do these presentations, we talk about how price of equipment has come down rapidly over time. Incentives are still there on the federal and state level, but they're coming down, and they are designed to go away, and they will do by 2020 or earlier. So people are advised to act soon. Next, please. This one, hopefully I don't need to go over in this room, but there is a thought that we don't have enough sun in this part of the world. And the comparative here, if you look at Alaska and Germany, relatively similar in terms of insolation, the amount of solar energy falling on their territories, have about 20% less than we enjoy in upstate New York. We have similarly less to the southwest of the United States. The only thing that means is you need a little bit more solar panel to get the same amount of electricity. Next, please. Next, please. So community solar involves a solar farm that is in the same utility area and load zone, and I'll explain load zone in a minute. And you are either a purchaser of a share or you're a subscriber month to month. In the case of our project here, we did not have a ownership model submitted, so we simply have a subscription model, which I'll talk about. So this is a very accessible form of solar energy for the 4 out of 5 of us who can't do it on site. I can't do it on site because I live in a forest. I have the financial stamina to do that. Some people don't. Renters can't obviously install on site. And people who are just not in a position in their lives to make a long-term investment are not going to do that either. This is a month-to-month commitment for discounted solar credits on your NYSEG bill. Next, please. So you do have to be a major utility customer in New York State to play. That's the regulation. I can talk about it if folks are interested, but if you are a muni or co-op customer, you cannot be part of these projects. Next. Yes, and so the way that your utility bill works in simple terms, you have a basic connection fee, which is not touched by this. You have a supply charge, and you have a I'm getting the word wrong here. It's not distribution, but it's basically the
Delivery.
Delivery.
Thank you. Delivery charge. This will touch all of the delivery and all of the supply, but not the connection. And so in essence, what you're getting is a 10% discount on your current bill, less the connection fee. Next, please. And yes, you can subscribe to get your electricity from a solar farm. And so what will occur once the farm is commissioned and put in service, and once the utility knows from the developer that you are a member, you receive those credits on your bill. They will show up on your NYSEG bill, essentially as a negative charge, wiping out those aforementioned costs. Currently, you will then also receive a separate bill from the developer That's on the Public Service Commission and the utilities to fix. And I can also talk about some of the policy things later. I don't know if we'll have time. Next, please. And this really graphically illustrates how it works. Next, please. So again, you have three entities here. You have a solar farm producing electricity, revenue. You have the utility, and you have the customer. That solar farm and the developer are telling the utility, give this much electricity, this allocation, every month, month to month, for 20 years, unless you decide you want to cut out, which you can do without penalty, to a customer. That customer is billed by the utility, as is always the case, and also from the developer. And I should hasten to say that in no case does the developer have any role in whether or not the customer is connected or disconnected. So if the customer fails to pay the developer and the utility, the developer will cut them off from the project, which means they revert back to their previous supply. It's on the utility to cut people off of electricity altogether for non-payment. Next, please. So the subscription model, again, is an allocation, and it's based on your historical electricity use. And so the idea is to affect 100% of your electricity use. As is the case in an on-site solar system, we live not at the equator, which means you're going to get more power than you need in the summer and less in the winter. That equals out over the course of a year. So it's the total consumption over a year that we're aiming for. Next, please. And continue. Yeah, so there's no additional upfront costs. The number one barrier to people making a decision to sign up, other than understanding how it works, is how can this be? Where is this 10% discount coming from? Is there a hidden fee? Unfortunately, we are on the heels of the energy services companies that have not been great actors in some cases. It simply amounts to the fact that for the developers, the total cost of the project, and then balanced against the total revenue coming from all of the subscribers, is such that they can make a profit and deliver a 10% discount. Next, please. Let's talk about load zones. Next, please. All right, so this isn't the greatest map on the planet. If you notice, there is a C in central New York. That's where I live, Broome and Tioga counties, with the exception of Barker and Deposit. Barker, Deposit, Shenango, Delaware, and Otsego are all squarely in load zone E, NYSEG. As long as you remain in the same load zone and utility territory, you can move anywhere in that zone and remain connected to the project. You simply need to give a change of address to the developer in addition to the utility, and you're switched to your new meter. Next, please. So that is the end of my formal presentation. Love to hear any questions that you might have about the project, or I could spend a couple minutes talking about some collaborative ideas, if I have them. Thank you. Yes?
What's the cost of the subscription? You're saving 10% on your energy. Is the subscription going to be less than that 10% or not?
So the idea is that let's just say you have a $100 charge outside of your connection fee every month right now. You're going to be paying $90 for that self-same supply to the developer instead of the $100 to NYSEG. You're still paying your $15 or whatever it is connection fee to NYSEG. So that's in essence how it works. How much it costs is going to depend on how much electricity you use, just like it does now.
Correct, so you're saving in that scenario $10 a month.
Correct. So we're not talking about knock your socks off numbers here unless you have a significant amount of electric use.
But unless I'm misunderstanding, is a subscription fee to the solar farm itself?
There's no fee.
No
It's
fee.
the subscription is the amount of energy that you signed up for.
And that 10% discount is regardless of what ESCO you've chosen in the past, or is it an average?
So it is the 10%, that's a good question. That's a 10% off the prevailing default NYSEG supplier. So if you have an ESCO, let's say you decided to get a somewhat higher cost ESCO because you wanted wind or whatever, the discount would be less in that case. So you'd be well served to switch back, if what you're out is the discount, to the default NYSEG supplier. because that's frankly the lowest supplier that's out there. And if you want to stick with a green energy supplier, know that the discount will be less. Because the floating discount is based on that NYSEG supply rate. So when it goes up, this goes up, staying 10% below.
That, okay. And then my next question is, so you had all these various load zones. Does each zone correspond to a solar farm, or?
So I know that there are other developers in E. I'm not sure, frankly, if there are any others in NYSEG E. And you need to be in NYSEG E in this case. And DRS, Delaware River Solar, is based in Sullivan County. They have 2 projects in Callicoon. I'm pretty sure they are building a project in this county, and I did not come prepared with the location.
It's in Lawrence, next to the county development.
Thank you. Then they've got 2 more also under development. I don't know if that fully answered your question.
Yep.
I have a question so far as the developer that does this project. Is this land then reassessed so far as the value of the property, or is it taken then off the tax rolls? How does it impact the taxpayers?
Right. So from the landowner's perspective, it's almost always a lease agreement, right? So in some cases, the developer will purchase the land, but in most cases that I'm familiar with, they'll pay a lease fee. And so that land, if you have an agricultural exemption, that will have a tax impact. Because if you have that exemption, the land that's taken out will no longer be exempt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is possible to negotiate with your developer and say, hey, can you make me whole? The developer can say yes or no. As far as I am aware, and I really want to emphasize, as far as I'm aware, there is no tax impact otherwise. So I'm not 100% sure of the answer to your question.
Thank you for answering my question, and if I was out of order, I apologize.
No, it's actually a great question. I haven't had that asked before. I will add actually another thing, and some of you are probably aware of this. There have been quite a number of concerns and even conflicts, I will say, around the whole question of zoning and permitting of these projects. And NYSERDA has put together a lot of information to help municipal officials that have permitting authority. They recently added a new service, if you will. If any municipality that wants it is having some questions or issues about zoning, permitting, anything, decommissioning, NYSERDA will send somebody to have a conversation. And it's not a, we're going to tell you what to do here from NYSERDA. It's, this is what we feel is the best course of action in terms of assessment and this and that. And then it's up to you to make a decision. We have home rule here. So obviously you could arrange that for yourselves. Part of what I do is try to serve people who have energy questions to the best of my ability. We're not currently funded to be a one-stop, but it's what we're pushing the state of New York to do, because typically people don't care what NYSERDA is paying for. They want assistance with whatever it is they're interested in. Anything else?
Any other questions?
As far as that resource from NYSERDA, I remember that various towns in the past year had to, there was a local law that they could either opt out of or stay in regarding pilots and tax breaks to solar farms. Is that, if a NYSERDA representative came to talk to a municipality, would they be able to answer questions on regarding that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Real Property Tax Law 487, or PTL 487, provides that there shall be a exemption from property tax on things like solar for 15 years unless the local authority passes a local law opting out. And you can actually go online, just search RPTL 487 opt-out, and they have a list of them all. Districts, school districts can do this, authorities can do this. Know that if you do this, the practical effect is you become a solar no-go zone for pretty much anything, because it's an unpredictable situation for the customer and for the developer. So as a customer, even with rooftop, I might sort of ponder, well, what's my tax liability over 20 years? I don't know, because it's going to change over time, right? So that's part of the reason for the law. The other thing people did was enact moratoria In some cases for good reason, because they didn't understand what was going on and people were coming in.
OCCA.
One
Go
more.
ahead.
Hi, my name's Bennett Sandler. Thank you for the time to present about a new project that we at Otsego County Conservation Association have gotten grant funding from NYSERDA to implement, as Adam mentioned, Heat Smart Otsego, which is modeled after Heat Smart Tompkins, which was modeled after Solarize. So as I follow Adam, there's an evolution that has happened in terms of bringing renewable and clean energy technology to the marketplace and promoting that within NYSERDA. Next slide, please. As I've mentioned, sorry, that's a little hard to read, font's small. We recently were awarded funding for 3 years to run Heat Smart, and these are the objectives of the project itself, and I'll get into more specifics, but as you can see there, it's really about market penetration of clean heating and cooling technologies into our area. I will back up for a second and say that we were one of 8 recipients for funding. So the campaign that was run in Tompkins County is going to be replicated in 8 different places across New York State. As you see on the bullet points up there, it's really a program to try and drive penetration of these technologies into the market by increasing consumer confidence in what the technologies can do, trying to streamline the cost of installing those, and then as a result, we end up increasing competition and increasing quality for consumers, as well as decreasing our dependence on fossil fuels that create greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. So what are clean heating and cooling technologies? We're basically, at the outset of our program launch, are talking about envelope improvements, which means air sealing homes, adding insulation to homes, heat pumps, these 2 different varieties. We've got cold climate air source heat pumps. Other people refer to them as ductless mini splits. Those typically are designed for conditioning spaces, not whole houses, whereas a ground source heat pump or also known as geothermal, are typically whole house solutions. We're also looking at promoting biomass systems, pellet stoves in particular, as long as they are EPA approved, and then wood gasification and pellet boilers with thermal storage as promoted by New York. Both DEC certified boilers, and there is an incentive program that lives out there to add the thermal storage, which is called Renewable Heat New York. If things go swimmingly, we will look into adding some other technologies, specifically heat pump. You can use heat pump technology to heat domestic hot water, and there's also a middle ground unit that's slower to come to market than the other heat pump systems, which is an air to water. You don't have to dig up your lawn to put pipe into the ground for a whole house heat pump system like you would with a Geo. Next slide, please. It's pretty straightforward. Our focus is going to certainly be primarily single-family residents, although there are buildings that fall through the crack a lot in Otsego County, which are both mixed-use and small commercial buildings. They don't tend to be addressed through existing NYSERDA programming, and we'd like to develop programs to help bring these technologies to those building owners. I think it's important to note leaky buildings need air sealing and insulation first. We don't really want to encourage people to upgrade mechanical systems on a house, and I'm referring to the heat pump and biomass boiler systems as mechanical systems. You don't really want to put those on a house that's leaking excessive amounts of energy. So start with the shelf first, and then talk about those mechanical systems. Next slide. We're in the very early stages. In fact, there hasn't even been a press release yet from NYSERDA that we've been given this award. This is our preliminary steps to participation. We're trying to, as Adam was indicating, basically function as a one-stop shop for building owners to sign up for energy audit process and then evaluate through cost-benefit modeling what's the best roadmap for energy savings and upgrades to clean heating and cooling systems after having had the energy audit. As I mentioned in the earlier slide, or actually was listed, one of the things that that's a significant element of the program is actually pre-vetting installers, and there's a competitive RFP process for local installers to become installer partners with our program. And a couple of the elements of that are attractive for the consumer are predetermined or listed pricing. To some extent, we may be able to offer program incentives above and beyond, basically volume discounting above and beyond the existing NYSERDA rebates. But we're really trying to help the consumers feel confident about a technology that they may not know a lot about. So we'll spend a lot of time doing a lot of outreach and education. Next slide, please. We're early on. I haven't given you a whole lot of information. I expect to be able to pass to either committees and or the rest of the board more details about exactly how our program is going to be set up. But it would certainly be great, and NYSERDA loves to see partnerships built with community leaders. So one of the things that would be helpful would actually be a board resolution supporting the Heat Smart Otsego campaign. It would be great, actually, if when we get our program up and ready to launch, if we could actually put a link to our program on the Otsego County homepage. And I would strongly encourage each and every one of you to also participate in the program. At this point, I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah?
What is the cost typically of an energy audit to the home? It said it may be fully covered or not.
It often is fully covered. So there are actually a variety of programs that exist out there. The low and moderate income homes typically have energy audits covered through weatherization or empower programs. There's a suite of programs that exist out there. And then moderate to higher level income homes have access to a free or reduced cost energy audit. So it begins to cost you some money if you make 200, help me here, at what point does you have to make a lot of money to begin to have
200% of area median income.
It's over $100,000. You gotta make a healthy amount of money before you actually have to start contributing, and they'll prorate the cost of the energy audit if you make a lot of money.
I think it's over 115,000.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Bennett, now the practice seems to be spreading in our area. If a contractor knows that they're going to get work from you, they throw the audit in as a freebie to get the contractor to do the work.
Okay.
So that's an unofficial arrangement, but it seems to be becoming almost customary.
Yeah, the point is that if you were to pay for it out of pocket, it would be $250 typically, $250 to $400.
And what about installation costs of the system?
Installation costs vary. There's a wide range, right? Geothermal jobs are in the tens of thousands of dollars even after incentives, and there's a lot of incentives out for geothermal right now. There's both a state rebate and federal tax credit incentives for geo. The air source heat pumps, air source heat pumps and pellet stoves are going to be sort of at the more affordable, somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 typically. And pellet and boiler biomass systems, whole house systems, are pricey.
If I may, I have a geothermal system that I purchased about 8 years ago, and if you're with number 2 heating oil especially, but also propane, it can be a good investment over time, because I was spending way more for my energy month to month than I am now. And at the time, there was just the 30% federal tax credit, and now there's a per ton incentive from New York. So in addition to that, and the prices going down, I paid $16,000 net. It would be less for my house, I hasten to say, because they're all different.
So on average, how long does it take to recoup your investment through energy savings?
Again, that'll vary from technology to technology.
You mean
Conservatively.
for geo? For geo? It's going to vary too. I
8 to
mean, my
12.
payback is probably 11 years, but here's the thing. I was spending probably $1,200 to $1,400 a month on energy before I got it. Now I'm always under $1,000, except for when we have really, really cold months. So I'm less worried about my payback and more about the fact that my cash flow month to month is way better.
Geosystems, I was going to say, typically 8 to 12 or 14 years, but you're less susceptible to the volatility of fuel oil market.
Yeah.
Thinking along the lines of how long you're going to be in your house.
Absolutely, but I do think it's important to remember that the homeowners, up and coming homeowners, are going to be more and more savvy about the operational costs of a house. So looking at a house with a geothermal system, I think more and more people are going to understand that it's going to be cost less to run that, to heat that house than it would if it had a fuel oil furnace in it. The point being that you should be able to recoup the cost of the investment if you were to sell it before you got to the payback period.
I have a question for Ken, but just a quick comment on payback. Obviously payback's important to figure out how much month to month added up, how many years it takes to pay for that system. But also, there is great value to the part of your heating that is now off the hydrocarbon grid.
Absolutely.
And you really do need to add that value in when you're figuring the payback. It's not money in your pocket, but it is really a very good thing for everybody around. But the question I have, Dan, is you said that there's a trend now for contractors to do the energy audit free as long as you're going to go with them for the work. It would seem to me, first thing I thought of, wait a minute, so I'm going to take this list of things that this guy says I need to buy from him. I would think I would much rather have it done independently, like you would. Well, there's a lot of examples, as you know, but that made me a little nervous when you said that.
This is something that I'm actually running a program that's somewhat related to Venice, but different, same but different, called the Community Energy Engagement Program. And what we're running into when we engage, we're primarily targeting low and middle income residents of the 6 counties. And what we're running into is contractors will say, you know what, if you decide that you want to do an envelope improvement, we're going to throw the audit in for free. If you go with air source heat pumps in addition to your envelope improvements, we'll see what we can do on that. They don't seem, they want to get their foot in the door. I understand where you're coming from, Gary, but what we have experienced so far, and it's brief experience because we've only been in operation since January with this program, but we are experiencing the fact that the contractors are rather, now that they're all set up with their blower door systems and everything like that, they pretty much will do that for you for free, because what they're doing is they're giving you a shopping list for the future as well as for right now, because they do a fairly comprehensive assessment of the needs.
Well, I'd like to learn more about what your
Sure.
experience has been, Dan, but truthfully, our objectives and what we wrote up in our original grant proposal was actually to separate the contractors doing the energy audits from the contractors doing the mechanical system
We've
installs.
talked a number of times about energy audit in my house.
Right.
But frankly, I'd like someone else to either do the audit and you do the work, or
Yeah, right, and one of the other reasons for doing that is as Heat Smart Tompkins, they've been sort of charging the way here. And what we found was installation contractors were sort of cutting their teeth on mechanical system installs that they really didn't have a lot of experience with, and vice versa. You have mechanical system contractors getting into insulation and air sealing when they didn't really have a whole lot of experience. And what we would like to promote is, let's let everyone stick to what they're really good at, but let's coordinate between the two. So insulation and air sealing, shell improvement contractors doing the energy audit, they know, and in that case, they would be in a position to tell you how best and what it's going to cost and what your paybacks are just for shell improvements. And then switch to the mechanical system contractors as a secondary option. Now, I've been doing that for 10 years. There's a lot of folks, I've done energy audits on 400 or 500 houses in Otsego County. There's a lot of people who've already had those energy audits done. And weatherization's a whole other bag of folks who've actually had those kinds of improvements done. So we would really like to encourage people who've actually had those energy audits to come back and look at perhaps the mechanical system, assuming that they've had insulation and air sealing improvements done at their house, to come back and look at what these new mechanical systems can do for them.
And a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to, these are residential only. Is there a commercial or public, nonprofit type side to it? So we were talking about PACE funding. Is there a way for commercial properties to take advantage of these to go into the PACE program?
Yeah,
Or
so
is that too complicated?
to go into the PACE program?
Yeah.
So I may not be the best person to answer that.
The answer should be yes.
The answer is yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So once you're able to roll that out in the county, nonprofits and for-profits, these are all measures that are eligible.
Okay, great.
I was just curious, with a geothermal system, an average 4-bedroom house, how much area would you need for that?
Well, Karen, I hate to say this, right? It always depends, right? The important thing is what's the energy load of that house? Is it an exceptionally tight and well insulated home, or is it exceptionally leaky? And that will affect the size of the system.
Size of the system.
Yeah.
So a leaky versus a well-insulated, what would be the
Well, so
difference?
typically in geothermal installs I've been involved with that were horizontal systems, so I don't want to get too thick into the weeds here, but if they were, you put piping in horizontally in a big field, typically we're bearing enough pipe for a 4 to 6 ton system. They're measured in tons, which that house that you described would probably fall into. Typically in a pit that's 50 feet wide by 120 feet long.
Bigger than a leach field.
But bigger than a leach field and deep. Typically we'd want to try and get 6 to 8 feet down.
If you don't have that space, you can do wells. I've got 2 240-foot wells in my backyard.
And if
where
you've
the
got a
leach field
pond
is.
close to your house, you can do that as well if the pond's big enough.
Can you speak a little bit to the success of the Heat Smart Tompkins County?
Well, it
They
was
have numbers on.
positive enough for NYSERDA to feel like this was something they want to invest in. By the way, this was the first round of several that they will throw out to initiate specifically clean heating and cooling community campaigns. As to how, there's been some, I know the numbers at Tompkins were a little bit disappointing from their original guesstimate as to what they expected to do. So I think they were somewhere within or under 100 participants who actually went to contractor year. Just so you know, our hope and expectation, we're doing this for 3 years, 3 different annual campaigns, would be to get at least 100 homes or buildings through an energy audit and 30% of those installing either insulation, air sealing, or one of the clean heating and other clean heating and cooling technologies.
Do
Yeah.
you have access to a database that tells you who's already had audits done? And
I'm working on that. So NYSERDA sits on top of a very large database because, so just so you, I don't know, Gary I know, and a few others here I know. So I was in the home performance with the Energy Star business, which is why I can speak to that. So the company I used to run has a variety of information. Yeah, it does 400 to 500 houses.
And
But everybody who was running,
I would just say, in the interest of full disclosure, that was with my husband.
one of my business partners was Michelle's husband. So I am no longer actually, that business is closed and neither Norm or I are actually going to be installers. I'm the campaign director to connect consumers with approved installers for the program. Another full disclosure. NYSERDA, everybody who did home energy audits that were funded by NYSERDA has to upload that data. So NYSERDA has a very extensive.
Everybody who did America got it. Have a look.
Yeah, that's so weird. Siri, calm yourself.
Go to sleep, Siri. It's bizarre. I've been working to do exactly that, and I think NYSERDA has been there, but I don't have. We're about to have our kickoff meeting next week. And
That'd be a good question to ask,
that
Scott.
will be, I'm sure, one that we all would like to have
I would
answered.
think if you could mine that data, and then
Absolutely.
those who had the subsequent
Absolutely.
work done to meet that, that'd be your target for your first.
Yeah, and it's a pretty simple metric. You know, we can tell based on the volume of a house and the blower door number if it's leaky or not. So if it's too leaky, then focus on insulation and air sealing. If it's had that work done or it's built right, then let's talk about these other technologies.
Actually, my question is to Karen. Karen, for Dan, Adam, and Bennett, do we have a summary? I mean, because you are all have different programs that are operating.
Well,
for Otsego
Aren't you
County-
glad he asked that?
For Otsego counties,
Yes,
you know,
because,
use-
I started getting all these calls to my office, and I'm like, I don't know who's doing what, so I said, can we all sit down and talk? So I brought Adam together, brought Bennett together, and Leslie, and Dan Sullivan, and we are trying to coordinate all of their efforts into letting people know what's out there. So I asked Adam to send me his forwarding PowerPoint. We've been advertising the notices of meetings on our websites and our Facebook page, so that's the best I've been doing so far, but we brought these people together because neither of them knew what the other person was doing. So now they do, and they're working cooperatively, and Adam and Bennett, I think, have two different programs completely. So we're kind of the conduit that did that.
yeah, it would be great to get separate summaries that, you know,
I have a white paper that I
that
can
would
get
get
out.
Yep.
sent out to the board, especially
Okay.
that we can make
Sure.
available through the county, through
When are
Slack or
you taking
whatever.
applications, Bennett?
We would expect to begin enrolling participants by August 1st.
Okay,
We haven't been able to do anything yet because NYSERDA's been sitting on the kickoff meeting.
right, I know that.
And now they finally have scheduled it for next week. So as soon as we get all of our materials from NYSERDA, then we can start rolling out the program.
I just want to add, Andrew, that your question and the response are a clear illustration of why we think NYSERDA should have a one-stop approach. So there's a coordinated effort in all 10 regions of the state. There'd be a lead contractor and a whole bunch of other people working with them, just like any other area of critical importance to a
Well,
region.
We're going to show them how that's going to happen.
That's it, that's it, that's it.
Unless there's
Show by
anybody
you.
else out there doing NYSERDA work we're not aware of.
There may be. NYSERDA works on, just so everybody knows, NYSERDA works on this system called the Program Opportunity Notice, the PON. So they think up these ideas. There's somebody down in New York City, I think it is, who thinks up these new ideas for, and usually good ideas. And they put a different PON number on it, and it goes out for bid. And not the same contractors take the same programs. I mean, my office, we actually do two programs now. Most of these other places, they're doing one NYSERDA program. So Karen, thanks to Karen for getting the three of us together.
That's because I was confused, so.
Cooperative Extension does a lot of this work.
Yes,
too.
Cooperative Extension does, that's true.
I guess I could be
They,
cooperative.
they aggregate a lot of those.
There's also a workforce piece to this thing. Everybody's curious.
Actually, can you, I should ask you to do this, can you just forward, my contact information is there, and I will send an email, actually to the full board. I'd be more than happy to both roll out more specific details. We'll forward the white page to, that describes the program a little bit and more details to you all, but I avail myself at any point if any of you have questions, concerns, comments about the program. Yeah.
Do you have any planned outreach to the communities, to towns?
A
and
lot.
villages, So that
That's
if
the-
there's
that's
new
the-
construction going on,
That's,
they might.
that's gonna be 75% of what I spend my time doing. Yeah, this is the first.
But it's this August 1st that you're going to start accepting applications?
Exactly, and then a whole community outreach campaign. Interestingly, NYSERDA, we have to vet it through NYSERDA, but I expect to do a house tour of installed technologies. I expect to do, Adam has been doing this for a long time, right?
Just
Going
not
out-
with heat pumps.
Going out into the community, explaining the benefits of the technology. I did not get into the weeds here because I thought it was a fairly short period of time, but I can come back and, bore you to tears with technological details. And would be happy to do that, but I expect to go out into the community and hopefully actually in coordination with both Dan and Adam, so that we can present a palette of opportunities for citizens without overwhelming them.
That's the key.
Trick.
Yeah.
So when we go into our communities, we'll have who they should contact? We have
Absolutely,
information for
absolutely,
the application?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. All right, now we get to reports. Yeah, I'm gonna have that. I was gonna say, you guys. Public Works, Representative McCarty.
Well, it's gonna be short and brief. We met on June 13th, Representative Kupnik was in and asked permission to use the parking lots on Saturday Baseball Hall of Fame induction weekend to raise money for county programs. We approved that. We talked about surplus equipment. We've got a list. Peter's kind of taking that over, looking at it. Jordan Clemens was in and talked about the forestry department. Bill Mason was in and talked about a lot of things, equipment, roads. And Mr. Zerke was in and said that the septic problem or the drainage problem at the clinic was repaired, and rooftop AC unit number 2 is now working temporarily. I don't know if that means on the 3rd floor or where it is, but that's back up working. And they're gonna meet again on July 23rd, and if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. Brief as I can get. Yes, Gary?
Yeah, let me update you, everybody on the parking thing. I've got a permit into the village so that we can do this. And Doug Zirkes is on board with us. He's gonna block off the parking lots the night before. I'll be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're looking for volunteers to start, I guess, either 7 or 8 in the morning. I would invite everybody on board to volunteer for a couple hours of this. My understanding from talking to people to do this is by noon you're done. There's no sense in recycling those spaces. It's just not worth the time. So once you fill up the lot, you're done. I'm thinking about maybe 5 people, two per lot, and 1 person to run back and forth and to substitute in for somebody running off for coffee or the bathroom.
Was there, I see it's resolution 196, but we didn't set a fee for that, did we?
It's in the resolution.
No,
No,
isn't it? Okay.
My thought was $20.
Okay.
And so that would give us just under 2,000.
Yeah, that's on there.
And the money goes to DSS?
This year, since I've been working closely with DSS on this, I think, and they have programs that they do fundraise for, I thought we'd start with that this year. Ed had a great idea, he was just talking to me this morning about it, and in the years to come, first projects, and Ed said, just put them in a hat, pick one out. I think that's a great idea. And that they'll be funded if they're legitimate projects, of course. But this year I'm proposing that be DSS. They're going to provide volunteers, lock boxes, and some of the materials we need. Yep. Oh, you're volunteering?
Volunteering, your first volunteer.
Yeah, you did last year.
I don't have far to drive, so.
You gotta be there 4 in the morning.
You got the
I'll be there.
Marietta 4 slot. Thank you. Thank you.
I had a quick question. Keith did a lot of work on figuring out what we to do with surplus vehicles in terms of our Auctions International, making all those arrangements. I noticed at the last meeting of department heads, they still had questions. Has that been resolved?
Pete was gonna address those, I saw some emails going back and forth, I don't know if he's satisfactory.
He's taken over the, and
Oh, okay.
I don't know what, there was a question about the contract that Auction International had told me that the contract had ran out with Onondaga, but yet you had an email where Andrew said that Onondaga did have a contract, so I don't know where that.
Yeah, I saw that email and I was getting ready for the contract and I contacted Andrew to find out what the number was of the Saratoga contract, and he got back to me with the Onondaga contract, and it's definitely extends through 2019 or something, so it's still a good contract.
So I didn't know if those contracts were, if they were different, or Onondaga was better than Saratoga was a lot, so.
So I did send him an email and I asked him, you know, is the Saratoga contract better, and I haven't heard back from him about that.
I know the site that we're trying to plan to put the cars where the compost pile at the county highway cleaned it up, but the other day I was down there was no cars, so I don't know if the message got the department heads that were supposed to put the cars over there, and I kinda got left them, so.
I saw some emails just yesterday morning between Karen and Pete, where if they solved everything, I don't know yet, but they were going back and forth.
I've got one of their specific questions in one of those emails right here. Karen asking two of us about this. Our department's responsible for moving surplus vehicles from their current location to the former compost site at the Meadows. No one is certain if the vehicles have to be moved. Some are not able to be driven, and many require trailers. Please confirm the time frame of when and if they need to be moved. So that is, I think you mentioned they had questions. That's
Yeah.
at least one of them.
Well, if they're drivable, they should move them there. That's common sense. If they're not, they're junk, I would think.
But they still have to get there.
Determine what runs and what doesn't run.
Have a trailer.
Yeah, I think they're looking for, you know, off the chase and say, okay, this is what you do. Drive them over there. And you,
So maybe further discussion for Public Works?
And a question should be asked, is if it isn't running, how did it get there? And if they aren't running, should we be taking them to the county somewhere or just to the scrapyard?
Right.
I mean, why are we
Yeah.
transporting each place?
Conversation I recollect was if they weren't running, they were going for scrap.
And they were staying where they were. There was,
And
That was the
I
conversation.
found out last week, there's down in Otsego, there's a company that will come and drop a trailer off to load scrap vehicles in, and then they come and pick the trailer up and take it. They don't, the price is taken out of whatever is into the scrap. So,
They're at a reduced cost, Weitzman.
huh?
The company's called Weitzman, and they'll
Right.
drop off the trailer at a reduced.
And that's
They won't
better.
pay you as much per ton of scrap as if it's
But
delivered.
that's
but-
still cheaper than us hiring somebody to haul them to wherever they gotta go to. So, but I guess it's in his hands, so.
Is it drain issue is that for the constituent of Otsego?
Yes.
Where has that been resolved? Because he
Yes.
sent me another thing last week with
Yes,
additional
Ed.
pictures.
Ed said that they fixed that.
No, she's talking about Churchill Road.
Oh, I haven't, we haven't had a meeting since then, so I don't know.
Smith, right?
Oh, the one with the manhole cover. Or the
Yeah,
man-
and then there's
Great.
RV bottoms out, and there's a 7-inch drop.
I have, your emails is I haven't heard a word. We haven't had a meeting since then.
Instead of mortar, we use spray foam?
Yeah, I said that like last month of what we did, and I was told they put some 2x4s in to shore up something, but it
That's
doesn't seem like the
actually
project's been completed.
some accepted practice in that they use spray foam even for footers for structures now. So it's a different type of spray foam than spray foam. It's not insulation, it's spray foam. It's
Have you
structure.
seen those pictures?
I believe I sent
saw
them to
the
you.
pictures, yes. I don't know what they used, I'm just saying, there is a spray foam now that's used in
Yeah,
construction.
and they went back with that, but there's still a drop,
Yeah.
it needs to be level, and so I was wondering if they were gonna take care of that. And also, how about the vehicle maintenance of vehicles, not enterprise vehicles that we already own, where department heads were having to go and line up where they're gonna take the vehicles?
With the ARI contract.
Yeah, are we
Yeah.
using that? Or is
Yes.
ARA managing it so the department heads aren't doing it any longer? We're not gonna have aggregate
I
issues?
don't think we decided, I think they were supposed to go, we wasn't gonna spend the money on them, whoever do that, was it?
The last discussion, I remember it had never fully been cleared up, that each repair situation has been taken care of on a case-by-case basis, so.
And there was, in DSS, we agreed on a dollar amount by which if it went up to beyond that, they would need committee approval, but underneath $1,000, I think they could just go right ahead and have it be repaired.
So $1,000 spent here by this department, 1,000 spent by this department, when do we reach the aggregate cost? So we have to look at that for purchasing.
Well, I think it was talked about that wherever garage they take it, that they would get an estimate, and if it was feasible to fix that vehicle or not. We talked about that.
Because they do have some repair lines in their budget.
Yeah, I guess I'm not making.
So,
So if we take them all to Kearns or whatever, or Ford, now we're doing an aggregate amount of business with one company that is above the threshold for what we would have to bid that service out for.
I
Right?
will
No,
follow
correct?
that up with, we can follow it up with the treasurer. I'm not aware that we've had that many of them. And Eve hasn't had any go above 1,000 since we,
Well, that should be cutting them down with the 25 new vehicles that we got under the thing. I
Okay,
mean,
but we still need oil change, we need all those things.
yeah, but doesn't Enterprise?
Well,
do
only for the
new-
enterprise vehicles, right?
the
ARI
ARI.
is different? Anyway, that was the question.
Well, and I think that, I'd have to go back and look at my notes on this, but I believe that Enterprise would do that for other vehicles, non-lease vehicles, or we could use ARI, and that there's not been a decision.
We had decided to go with ARI.
You did
That's what we
decide.
did,
Because
and they're
they're-
doing that.
Their garages are approved.
Right, they're approved and they don't take as big
Right,
of a
and-
cut off of the local person providing the service.
And Enterprise was a lot more money.
Right, the reason they went with ARI was because
They were
it's
approved.
considerably cheaper than Enterprise.
And more of our local people that we do business with are willing to work with ARI. They're the
More
broader base of
options, more
support.
businesses locally,
But-
shops that were, I remember that being improvement committees, I think. but I'd have to look. Anything else? For Representative McCarty? IGA, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The IGA committee met on the 12th of June. We invited in Dennis Clark, the new Veteran Service Officer, to give us an update on how he was 3 months into his position and how was that working out. We uncovered a couple of different things which were noted in the minutes, issues with reimbursement. I did address this with the treasurer and I found out more about why that was happening and have been assured that with the staffing in the treasurer's department being brought back up to speed, that should go away. So anyway, his concern was that the reimbursements weren't going through quick enough. They declared their old van surplus, and also Dennis informed us that he had attended the Veteran Service Officer class and the transition was going as planned. We also had the Lori Lohnbauer from the Board of Elections come in and informed us that coming down the line, they're going to be using the position of Deputy Commissioner of Elections, and this is something that will be discussed further with personnel, and then she'd come back to our committee and tell us how that was actually going to look. It's due to requirements by Board of Election law that we have to make that change. Then the big part of our discussion came next. We had a conference call that Karen Sullivan facilitated with Rich Cunningham from Toma Development. And this was to discuss the program income audit that we've been talking about through the past couple of months. Karen and the Treasurer's Department identified $638,704 of program income that had come into the county over the past 18 years. Due to the New York State requirements, that's the money that we have to spend down over the course of the next year to keep us in good standing for receiving future grants and state money in future years. So we had a big discussion on what were appropriate uses of that funding, and then we did direct Karen to follow up with the OCR, the Office of Community Renewal with New York State, to see how our projects that we identified, were they fully eligible, could we do what we wanted. And then in between that meeting and our second IGA meeting, we did have Karen come back to us with some things that we liked, we were able to look at again, and some things got taken off the table because of those requirements. The review session for program income guidelines is basically what we had. Benefit low and moderate income, economic development ensues, half of the jobs have to be available to low and moderate income individuals. If it's an infrastructure project, it has to show benefit to low and moderate income residents. So part two of that became our actual project selection, where we did identify 7 projects for further discussion, further study, and hopefully we'll be committing some of those funds. And the actual projects and the actual amounts are in the minutes, so I'm not going to go through them. But it was very interesting discussion, and I feel that we had a lot of good discussion and a better understanding of how that funding works, and hopefully we'll be able to bring some of these projects to fruition. We did release the Otsego County Fair money to them that was in the budget for this year, and also we had a special case, thank you Keith, for the community events money. We had a group, the Cooperstown Lions Club, did a Susquehanna River cleanup, and they collected a lot of garbage. They had asked if they could just have their garbage fee waived, but he thought that we didn't, just to not set a precedent, maybe we could just use some of the additional funds that were left from the community events grants. And so we went on a special use and allocated a not to exceed $500 for that award for our very own landfill. We then followed up with a meeting with Phil Church from the Oswego County Administrator. Very informative, really great meeting. He had a lot to tell us about county governance. We learned stuff we had not heard of before, and then lots to think about as we continue that discussion in our own county. And we also had Steve Aquario from NISAC, the president of NISAC, phone in for a meeting, and both of these sessions were very informative. One of the things that Mr. Aquario asked, are we reacting to a problem or are we following a vision? And that was one of the guiding questions that he has offered very generously to bring staff down here from NISAC and have a bigger discussion, and this is something that I hope to have set up for the 31st of July, which is our second governance meeting. We'll get to questions in a minute. The next IGA regular meeting is 9 a.m. July 10th. The next governance is 9 a.m. July 31st. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Kathy?
The NISAC, if he's gonna come down, could that be scheduled for a full board meeting so that everybody's here?
Sure. Yeah, we could do that, but it hasn't been scheduled yet, so
Board meeting's the next day.
The next day.
the following day, so we could just do it for August 1. Yeah.
Right. And
Then we can have other stuff at that meeting. Sure, we'll have plenty to talk about.
And I think the community, the bed tax, the community events grant, my understanding is fully funded by the bed tax, the amount that's going into that.
Yeah.
So then my question becomes, it was supposed to be for tourism-related things, if we now are starting to take money out to pay for cleanups by different groups, does that start a precedent, and is that a proper use of the money?
Well, our thought was that the last time we had a private group come and ask for money was the Historical Society wanted to have money to do the roadside markers, $1,400. And we didn't want to I think we just gave them the $1,400 out of the budget at the time. So I remember the discussion was, well, let's put some money into the community events grants that could cover some of these other community type activities that come up throughout the course of the year that don't qualify through the exact parameters that we use to award the community events grants. So that was what our intention was in upping the amount to $50,000 in the budget this year. I don't know, there was plenty of talk at the time that some of this money might go outside of a bed tax tourist use. So we did mention that might happen. I hadn't gotten any farther than that. So if Ellen, if you want to weigh in on that. Gary?
I think there's a case to be made that it is significantly cleaner river, and the list of things he said he's gonna pull out of there, it's in August, by the way, it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
The list of things he said he's gonna put out of there is gonna change, the quality of
the
that
tourist
river
experience.
for when they look at it, they're not gonna see those cinder blocks and so forth.
Okay.
I'm not sure anybody's objecting to what will happen, and that the county should be a partner in it. But where should we partner, and where should we get that money from? I think that taking it out of the community events grant for tourism that was set up is not the right place. I would rather set that precedent and take it out of, give them free pass at the transfer station than to take it out of community events grant. Next year, everybody that wants to pull a tire out of somewhere will be here asking for that money out of the community events. That's where my concern is. Very worthwhile, great intent by the Lions Club, but I'm just not sure that the money to fund it should come out of the community events grant. There are other places we can, and I think we should be exploring that.
Actually, Andrew has some comment.
Well,
Did you have?
I was gonna say that, first of all, bed tax dollars already go into the general fund, and we use those bed tax dollars without any restriction. So, the money we're taking from bed tax and putting into the community events grant program, I mean, there's no restrictions on that money, I guess is what I'm getting at. But the community events program, some of the applications are borderline.
My exact thing.
They're borderline tourism events as it is. In fact, we'd have to go back and look, but I think one was pretty close to kind of like a park kind of preservation.
One was for a library or something, wasn't it?
Well, a library program, but there was, was it Greenway or somebody?
Yes, over in Lawrence.
Doing kind of a park kind of development promotion. It was borderline, making the park more accessible, but also promoting it. So I think we have some events that already are, if the Lions Club, I think you could make it fit compared to some of the other ones we already have funded in the past.
I think it's a huge stretch paying tipping fee, making it work in tourism and bed tax. That's my opinion. So.
Just taking the broader community event approach. Michelle, did you say something?
Oh, I would just echo what you're saying. I mean, the parameters of the community events grant say the primary focus is to increase tourism, but it also gives an opportunity for things that build community. And I believe that a Lions Club participating in a cleanup activity builds community. And then there's Gary's point, which it also helps tourism. So I don't feel like that, I think that I was happy, this issue came to SWEC, I was happy to waive the tipping fee, and I was happy to participate in the, funnel it through the community events. I think it's something that maybe can fit in more than one place, it doesn't have to just be one place.
Well, I think certainly Cleaner River and parks, something that may provide tourist opportunities for people too. It's not just local people that use the river, use the parks, so there's an opportunity for tourism there too. A lot of people, for example, the canoe regatta brings in people from all over. They're staying overnight, paddle down the river and clean up the river. It helps promote that.
Well, I wasn't finished with, when I had my hand raised before, but perhaps we could be using the money from parking to set up a fund to help communities that are doing just this, so all communities will benefit from it. It's a program we haven't had before, but it could offset tipping costs for things they bring in after the, document, 4 tires, 63 cinder blocks and stuff like that. And I know it won't be settled here
No,
right now.
and this was a broad use. Keeping it in the community events kept it very broad rather than going down into specifics and having to, narrow it down on a per event basis. It was a chunk of money, can help communities, well, this does, so we felt it was appropriate, so.
So demand becomes apparent, we can create another.
Yeah, we can do something different, so.
The other thing was someone brought up to me about the veterans van at the, that the county uses, and on the back, I think the intent was to put the slogan, all gave some gave all, but what's printed there is some gave some, and some gave all, and then someone went through with a pen and crossed out the word some in the first part, and I don't know if they etched it or put in all gave some and some gave all, so.
So what you're saying is that it's not correct on the back
Yeah, I
of the
can't
van?
imagine that the veterans
so
person
we-
wanted that to be on the back.
we should
Like, some of
tell
you gave some, but,
then that he should take the,
back to wherever they
Take it
did it,
all.
before somebody etches some.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that doesn't sound appropriate at all, so.
And I have a photo of it.
And had you reached out to the veterans officer at this, you're just telling me, so I'll tell him?
Yeah, I just got it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just don't want to overload him with emails if he's already heard about it.
Yeah,
so.
no.
Okay, all right, I can do that.
Reed, can I bring up something different with IGA?
Oh, sure. With regards to IGA, yes, yes.
I just wanted to go back with the projects that we're considering moving forward.
Yes.
We had also talked about, and I just want to make sure it's, for Dave, with possible presentations in addition to NICEC, we talked about having TOMA come, especially because of the possible microenterprise grant. I just wanted to,
To kind of give us all a
bring that-
primer on guidelines.
exactly, that we talked about at IGA, this idea of TOMA obviously is on retainer to help carry out, as Karen had explained to us, facilitate these microenterprise grant initiatives, and we're talking about doing one focused with agricultural businesses, and just like having NICEC present to the full board, we talked about having TOMA present to the full board about that process and the accountability and reporting and.
Right, and all that goes into what they actually, the service that they do provide for us, they could kind of build out what that actually looks like.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss that.
Right, I'm just not 100% sure that having them both come on August 1st would
Oh, yeah, no,
be
I-
a good thing.
No, I mean, we could maybe wait with the TOMA thing until we get a little
Yeah.
farther along in the process, right? Maybe.
I don't know, Karen left, so we'll have to.
Yeah,
we'll have to ask
we'll
Karen.
figure it out. We'll keep that in the forefront of our priorities. Okay, any other questions?
Not really a question, but just a comment or information. The Board of Ethics fully populated that last year after the resignation, or not resignation, but Jack Henson having to leave because he's no longer a county official. We called a meeting for the board. Ellen has been working with scheduling and having a tough time getting all three of them available at the same time. But we will be, I think we got a date now, that at least two of the three have agreed to. And she'll be doing some
Yeah, we only had two.
orientation and training, and we get started on the process of our first appeal.
Well, I think it's
If it-
really important to keep in mind that just because someone states that something is proper for the ethics board, that doesn't mean that it is.
I just can't imagine Dave finding anybody that none of us knows.
Right.
You know, that's the whole point, you use your networks to find people who are appropriate.
Do you have another idea?
No.
The reason that that board has not been populated since it was.
Well, that's no excuse. You need to have a populated board.
I think it's been very difficult to populate it. I think that's the reason, part of the reason that it's never been populated.
I just wanted to just clarify, one of the first things, once they're actually operational, would be reviewing those conflicts of interest statements, right? I mean, that's a big thing we've continued to talk about, that no one is really reviewing those disclosure forms that we're all filling out and other county employees and the IDA board is filling out, and that's really a main purpose for that board, right?
Correct.
Yes. Anything else for Representative Kennedy? Thank you very much. Human Services, Representative Kutnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to be brief. You have the minutes available. We met on June 14th. Went over the fiscal health, went over personnel. We're still, I think it's a constant effort to streamline the personnel system, to keep positions populated with people who are trained to do the job. That's the challenge, and there's always lots of ideas and thoughts about how to improve that. But we still have a tremendous backlog. We have still a tremendous number of cases that are being done by other people, and increasing the workload for the people who are there because of the positions that are empty at the moment. Lots of odds and ends this month. Just a couple that of interest to me, so I'll note them, and if you have any questions about anything that we did, please ask. We're talking about daycare subsidy. There are waivers that are complicated, but end up reducing the cost of our daycare system through DSS. Those costs, the waivers may go away and the costs may increase, and due to the fact the action of the federal government. And we will be getting an extensive overview of that in July, because that could have some impact on us. We talked about the 2018 Farm Bill. If you don't know anything about the Farm Bill, it's really interesting. I think it's useful to learn about that. It has a significant impact on all Americans, how they eat, what farmers grow. And it also has a huge impact on food stamps, the SNAP benefits. And you may have seen in the paper that those are being reduced, and the farmers aren't happy about that. And most people aren't happy about that, but so we're dealing with that too. Again, this is kind of like a slow motion train wreck. It's going to be a while before we see that impact. We talked about the foster care driving policy. One of those things that you never think about, but then realize that it's there. We have foster kids that are in foster placements, and we thank the parents every year at a ceremony here. When those foster kids get to driving age, they get their license. Who's responsible for them on the road? You know, who's responsible for insurance, for instance, for those kids, and you know, all the other things. So we're going to engage with the foster care driving policy. at one of our next meetings so that we can update that and make sure that that's serving us well. We've submitted a grant to create a community garden and we can provide electric power to the tiny homes or part of it through that. And there's an area contractor who may be able to assist with lumber donations for the program. So that's going on. So the next meeting is July 12th, 1 o'clock, and it's at the Meadows. It's usually, our meetings are usually upstairs on the third floor conference room. It's in the Meadows in the SPOA conference room, and if it's where it was a while ago, it's the first room on the right as you come. You take that left at the metal detector, and it's the first room on your right. So, questions?
Public safety, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on June 18th. Some of the highlights of our meeting, we found a couple of issues with resolutions that go through that don't make it to the attorney's office to come before the board. We have a couple here today. One is on the sheriff being able to fill positions without going through everything. That was actually passed at admin and PSLA in March of 17. We have another one today that's going to be increasing pay for a public defender, assistant public defender in the family court side that never made it through all the process. We've had a conversation about how we can check another box or something on the plan, on the sheet, but those are big things we need to take care of. Rob O'Brien come in. We approved buying some security cameras for the tower sites. We also discussed dedicated after-hours IT support for the jail, for emergency services at 911. That's an ongoing conversation. Not all the problems that have occurred would be able to be handled or fixed with someone there. So it's not internal, all these problems. We also spoke about direct dispatch from CMT or other paid services. We've had a little pushback on that, and there was a statement made, and we're gonna change the minutes to reflect it at the next meeting about, because Rob did correct it by the end of the meeting that day. He had texted me. He had said Delaware County did direct dispatch. Well, he texted me during the meeting after he left and said I was incorrect. I saw 2 or 3 out front of the committee members out front and mentioned that to them, but I never got a change in the minutes. So CMT saw that, and they got very upset because it doesn't occur. So, but he did correct it. Tony Gentile came in, he gave us revenues. He's doing very well this year based on all the fire inspections. We were talking about scheduling presentations for the board. The SEPA, the updated SEPA and the updated SEMP, the SEMP that's finished this month. There's a committee suggested that Art come to the full board to present. I guess we're gonna have to work out a time. He was hoping to come August, but we may have to, so. I
Let me check with Carol.
So I don't know who else is in line, but we had made a suggestion that he come, so. They discussed a lot of training. He also gave an update regarding the training center. It seems that the state fire inspectors, the state fire training inspectors have found issues with the steel constructed burn buildings. And they are kind of pushing back on the project, the proposed project that we have. The committee has asked, well, can we use some of the money to put some stuff in the ground? Until you have a finalized proposal, I'm not sure that's the best idea, but they are looking at probably $200,000 more than what was in our budget this last year. So they were told to bring in finalized proposals, and we'll do what we can. So The public defender and county attorney came in, discussed CAFA and going forward. That was a long discussion that I don't think we got anything settled, but the public defender was sent back to readdress and finalize and get accurate information for us to move forward. We're gonna meet on July 17th at 10 a.m. It says 9 a.m., but it's 10 a.m. Because ATI is meeting at 9 a.m. So. Oh, this says the 17th. I had the 19th.
That's what I have.
Me too.
I have the 19th at 10.
Yep.
This says,
That's what I have.
and then it says, we'll change that too. And the fire advisory board is that night too, I think. Third Thursday. Any questions?
Yeah, can you just explain a little bit on this private ambulance service, how the dispatch currently works and how they wanna change it to the direct dispatch?
We want to direct dispatch.
Does that mean that somebody can call them up, CMT?
No, our 911 center.
Okay, so
Our
it
911 center.
all goes through 911, and then,
So we have capability of knowing where all the ambulances are and who's in service. We want to know where they are.
even the private ones, you mean,
If we can.
okay, well, that would make sense. Yeah, okay.
Does this mean, right now, they're toning out local departments for 2 times, the 3rd time, they're toning out CMT. Now this would
They would like
mean
to get them moving towards.
CMT will be on the first tone.
Yes, they would like to get them moving
Okay,
wherever they get. There's a couple of them in the county, that's all. So
Okay.
they may be, Rob himself was at the scene of an accident, took 45 minutes to get
Oh,
an ambulance there.
yeah,
So
okay.
if we move them on the first,
yeah, that makes sense.
and CMT is saying, well, you know, that interferes with our, which maybe it does, but our responsibility is to be as responsive as possible.
Oh, so they don't wanna just go there thinking they might have to go, but they're just getting closer just in case?
They say it may mess up their schedule, so
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
it is, so,
Okay.
but since that email that everybody got from Ms. McGowan, Rob and her have talked and things are moving and it's moving in the right direction, so.
So right now, the dispatch with CMT is indirect. So 911 needs to call the headquarters, CMT headquarters,
Right.
and then they
Oh, right, yeah,
dispatch.
okay.
He wants the ability to call
The
the
ambulance.
ambulance that he can see is closest.
Oh, I see, okay, yeah, okay.
Save time,
All right.
it's all about
Yeah,
saving
yeah,
time, so.
okay, thanks.
Any questions for the chair? Health and Ed, Representative Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee met on June 11th. Sue Matt spoke with us a bit on a number of issues. First, she informed us about the closure of the Mental Health Association in Ulster County. Looks like there is good news, though. A transition's being made pretty quickly over there. It's been approved by the Office of Mental Health, so that's positive. Still no word on the Department of Health Transformation Grant. We expect that every month that we meet, and every month we hear that it hasn't.
It's still not, no.
We spoke a bit about moving ahead with the development of 40 apartments in the Oneonta area, I believe down in the River Street area. Approval has been given by something called the Housing Continuum, and the committee discussed that a little bit. We also, again, revisited the discussion of the Westcott lot and the Main Street property, and the service delivery needs, capabilities. Again, we're waiting on the grant information, so that'll help with that discussion as well. Tammy McDonald met with the committee. She informed us of additional funding that's been received from the Health Research Institute and the Rural Health Education Network. And she's working with the Treasurer's Department, or Treasurer's Office, on how to handle that budget mod. Spoke a bit about a Tai Chi program that they're running in various locations throughout the county. Looks like it's being well received. She also, Tammy informed us of the senior picnic So that's July 19th at Glimmerglass State Park. Folks are invited to attend if they'd like. Let's see. She's working with the senior meal provider on improving the quality of the meals in response to various concerns that have been raised. So Tammy's very concerned about the quality, and she's working on improving that. We also touched on the recent private pay rate increase at the Cooperstown centers. We asked Tammy to do some research, look into that a little bit. She did discuss with the administrators over there the issue, got some information to the committee, and I believe since our meeting, the rates have been reduced again, so that's good for everybody. Don Smyers met with us as well. I don't really think I have anything on that. Heidi Bond and Matt Johnson from the Department of Health met with us. Rabies testing is increasing with the warm weather. We heard a bit more, a bit of data about the 2018 Living Healthier Expo back in April. Heard a little bit more about its successes. Some interesting data there is there were an estimated between 1,300 and 2,000 of our residents attended. There were also various stakeholders, including substance abuse partners, mental health partners, partners promoting prevention and management of chronic diseases. 846 of our residents attended presentations in the auditorium. 150 tick removal kits were distributed, 146 radon test kits, and 124 bike helmets. So all good stuff, and they're already working on planning next year's event. Heidi also gave us an update regarding the RFP for transportation services. Only one response came back, and she hopes to bring something to us next month for approval. I think that was about it. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any contact with the city of Oneonta about Westcott Park?
Has the committee? No, not at this point. Kind of, I think the first step for us is really hearing about the grant, the transformation grant, so we know what our options are.
They moved forward at their last city meeting, I believe.
Did they? Okay.
Well, it was a couple meetings ago, they actually gave the mayor permission to negotiate with someone to purchase it. But since we're talking about this, Danny and I finally had a chance to meet last week to talk about 242 Main. And we feel like there's a lot of information we don't know anything about, and we're gonna try to collect information. But one thing I might as well ask you while we're all here, has the board ever really talked to the city about selling that and being included in the Westcott development? Because if you read their DRI document, it's in there.
Which part is in there?
Well, there's actually a thing, it says this isn't part of the DRI funding. I just looked this up last night because I had never read, on the city's website, there's a whole thing that talks about all the background from the city and all this DRI projects. Is really long and it's kind of repetitive. But in several places it says that one of the things that they want to do is repurpose the county office building. And I'm wondering if they came up with that decision independently, or if maybe Len Carson was on the DRI.
I was going to say Len Carson may have had
Was
some
he a
discussion.
representative of the county?
On the
He was on
DRI,
the-
he was.
Okay, well then, I don't know if that committee is still meeting because, that part of the a lot of those decisions
But he
have
was
already
doing
been
that as
made.
part of the health and education.
Well, so then I'm thinking, well, should we have somebody, is that committee still meeting? And did we lose something with him leaving and he never got replaced?
Are you talking about a committee of the city or a committee of the county?
Well, the DRI committee, I mean, I don't know if they're still active, because I think they're in the next step now, which is like figuring out, the new thing is they've got this new grant that they just started working on, and applications are announcing this week. On the Monday, they had a big, meetings at, Foothills for people that want to apply for their new grants that are happening downtown. But I don't know if the original DRI committee got disbanded, or, because I couldn't even find out who was on it. I know some
Yeah, I
of the
don't
people.
know anything about that.
So I'm just really wondering, was the county really involved in any of these things, and do you know that they are considering repurposing the county office building, and it's been like on this document for a year or two?
Right, because it started back when Kay Stuhldreher was chair of the
Yeah.
committee, the Health and Ed Committee, and Len was on that. And that's when they first started.
Right, well, I mean, so have you guys really had any real actual concrete discussion about this.
They never came to the full board.
Never came to
Yeah,
Public
never came to
Works.
the full
They
board.
they
Never
never
right.
came to the full board of Public Works.
Well, I didn't think it ever went to a committee, right? I mean,
It went to health and ed, it wasn't discussed in health and ed several times. So
right, but the building is Public Works, would be,
Correct.
whether we're gonna
Yeah,
sell it
it
or
was
not,
discussed.
so.
Authority to move forward.
Right, it
That's
has
the
not been
Public Works.
granted, so,
No,
or
that's
discussed.
true.
So was it in health and ed because they were talking about the co-location and the moving of different things, is that?
Yeah, well, that's where it started from.
Okay,
And it did go to Public Works at least once, because I remember Len coming to Public Works and
Okay.
talking about it. Not that, obviously. when
Yeah,
it
health
was-
and ed oversees the mental health clinic, so.
right,
Yeah, that's a pretty
okay.
significant part of their job.
But do you have any, like, did we ever have any real actual contact with the city where we sat down and talked about this?
Only through Len, that I'm
Okay.
aware of. Yeah. And when he was left, then kind of got left. by the
Yeah,
wayside.
see, I
And
think
then
that's,
you and
maybe
Danny
there is
picked
kind
it
of a gap there, because it didn't really we don't really know exactly what his involvement was. It seemed kind of independent, because it wasn't really involving the whole board, right?
up. Well, it was all preliminary.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Never
at
got to
last
the
Public
point.
Works meeting, Peter set up a committee of him and I to work on 240.
Yeah, I
with
saw that,
Danny.
I saw that in the minutes, yeah.
That's all I know.
So anyway, just to let you guys know, when Danny gets back, we're gonna probably start meeting with people like Sumat and Eve and just try to gather information about what they need, and then maybe get,
You should contact Len and see,
I think probably, yeah, we'll probably do that too. And then try to figure out, instead of just saying, are we selling the building, just really try to figure out how we can best put our services together for the county, and have we outgrown that building, and do we need to do something else? And this transformation grant will be helpful to do that, but now I read in the Public Works minutes that the public defender wants to move into.
Well, well, the public defender's office wants to create a satellite office in Oneonta.
Right, okay,
The location is up to you all.
right. So now we've got like lots of different departments. We've got motor vehicles, we've got health, DSS, we've got mental health, we've got probation, veterans, and now public defender. There's a
it's
lot
all
of different
complicated, that's the whole.
things that could use the services, and that's why this has become so complex, because it involves pretty much every committee and so we're trying to like gather information and sort of streamline it, and then, hopefully we can bring people together to help make a decision. Anyway, I just wondered about that Oneonta thing, because it seems like they were going in one direction, and we were like not even on board.
Because it all got, when Len left, it all got
Okay, all right,
disappeared, he was spearheading it,
okay.
yes.
I mean, I was just gonna say, there was never any commitment. I mean, it was,
Never.
you know,
It was
look
all-
at.
Well, that's what I just
but-
wanted to
but
find
look-
out.
Look at our strategic plan. I mean, there are
Yeah.
things in the Otsego County strategic plan that are just as ambiguous as the sale of 242 Main. So, I mean, you know, I think, you know, in a way, Len, I mean, he got appointed to DRI. We have nothing to do with that. The city appointed him to be a part of that process. He provided regular updates to this board about the DRI process throughout the whole undertaking. And my understanding with the DRI is, I mean, they have a pretty clear hierarchy now of their next steps. I mean, I think if we really wanted more information about it, we should just ask Gary Herzig to come here as the mayor of Oneonta and present, you know, to Otsego County.
Well, that was
to
definitely
fill
one of the
us
first
in.
things that Danny and I were gonna do, is just kinda try to meet with him and the city manager, and just try to get a brief overview of what the plan is, cause even on the website with the DRI material, they're talking about having a plaza, this building that they're gonna build in Westcott Lot has a plaza, and then there's supposed to be a pedestrian walkway down to Market Street, but there's no kind of sketch about it. I mean, I gotta think that was a very preliminary idea, so we don't, we just wanna try to get an idea of how that's gonna impact what services we have. I could think if they take out the parking and they close off that whole area there, it's gonna really impact DMV a lot. I think if people can't park over there, I think it's really gonna be kind of a problem. So, at least we just need to get a little bit of information about what.
But there's other information behind 242 Main. I mean, there was a security study that shows.
Right,
there's
we're trying, and this is the kind of
significant
information we're.
expenses. So I mean,
we're collecting all
like
this.
the things you're throwing out right now are very disjointed. Like in my opinion, let's just like, this isn't, in my opinion, like, let's do our due diligence and then, you
That's
know,
what I'm saying, that's what
yeah.
I'm saying, me and Danny are gonna try to do, is find all this information, connect it all together, and then get people together and try to figure out what to do, so, yes.
Yeah, to, maybe to help with the disjointedness, and I agree. And I don't mean to suggest what you guys need to be doing, and I'll do it, certainly. But it seems to me, first we have to decide whether we need to move the departments and the services that are into.
Oh, yeah.
before we do. The conversation at this point should not be about the building.
Right.
Exactly, that's what I'm
It should
saying,
be
yeah,
about
yeah.
the services and whether they need to, and so the security study comes into play. Meeting with Sue Matt as soon as you can and asking her those questions
Right.
come into play. Because she'll be a really great partner if she's, you know, if you guys are aligned. And then once you've made those decisions, then, all right, so probably the next thing is, where do we go? And then the third thing is, let's sell the building.
Or we don't necessarily have to sell the building.
Or we don't
right?
even have to sell it,
You know,
yeah,
we could,
so.
yeah, so.
And that's what started, the security study in Sumat
Yes,
is where this
exactly.
whole conversation got started.
Right.
See, that's where it all started, and Len took the lead on following through, and then it got lost in the shuffle
Right.
during the re-election.
Right.
Now we're getting you guys up back up.
Well, so I don't know, but Mayor Herzig had emailed Danny last week and said, well, so where are we with selling the building? And he just said, you know, they'll talk to you when I get back from Japan, and so, it's like, and they just seem to be on a different plane with this whole thing.
They haven't communicated with the county very well at all.
No.
Yeah, but they have, he has informally, you know, I've gotten the same messages that he's really anxious to sell that, for us to sell it so that they can move forward
Right.
with this larger project, you know, so there's all this stuff, you know, coming around.
But
we
we're
need
not
to-
at that
we need to
point.
decide whether we need to move.
We're not at that point. We have a lot more homework to do.
Oh, they are, yeah, that's.
They only each position is appointed to be on the board too, that keep them in the loop, have them at the committee meetings. so
No,
that-
we talked about that, you know, that we go to the public works meetings when they're talking about that, so. Okay, just thank you, I just wanted to check. Wasn't me,
That's
it
good.
was insane, but okay.
Anything else for Representative Snell?
Yeah, switching gears. I just had a question about Lyme's disease and if you're discussing that in meetings, like are they tracking cases and are they?
Yeah, we did discuss that earlier this year, I don't really recall.
Right, I don't think we're tracking the cases of Lyme or the new tick-borne disease that I can't remember. Yes, thank you. The Department of, they're not tracking like incidents of disease, but they are handing out tick kits, and information about preventing, tick bites and,
Prevention.
well, that is one way of preventing, yes.
You're curious about incidents.
I'm just
Right,
wondering
I
if
don't-
it's on the rise in the county or not, that's my main.
Countywide, it doesn't seem to be being tracked, it might be being tracked statewide.
Statewide.
That's something to talk about in the next meeting, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, next meeting is July 9th at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
Yep.
Solid Waste, Representative McCarty.
Thank you, we met on June 13th. Aaron presented a review of the following reports. Recycling for May was 496 tons. We haven't got a bill yet for it, for you know, the price went up. We discussed the issue of plastic bags. Maybe trying to pass a law or something to ban them. They're getting to be quite a problem. And mattresses, for the month of May, we had 280. Solid waste total was 3,799 tons collected in May. We had a credit from Casellas for $5,300. The e-waste to date for 2018 was 60,150 pounds. That to date, what we spent was almost $13,000. Jordan Clements was in and gave his report. He's planted 7,000 trees for buffers in 4 different properties. Awful busy in the fields. He's planning a tour for the couple of parks or forest areas in the county. signed up for August. I discussed the screening program and that he's trying to get going. He discussed the compost, I asked to get the area cleaned up and down there. We had the compost had been done. Karen presented a flyer from Casella dated back to 2018, recycling commodity update. I think that's to let people know what can be recycled. We talked about the Lions Club cleaning up the river. Karen presented a request from Montgomery County Landfill Management for a approval to lease a new tractor. We approved that for our part of cleaning up keeping the trench or the leach off the landfills. We discussed the necessary repairs that need to be made at the transfer station, and wondered if the highway department or building service could manage them, and that's a question that hasn't been answered. There has been 2 properties accepted by the state for the 30-day ag district inclusion, and we meet on July 17th at 9 a.m.
Is there an updated total on the, I don't know if this is a public works question or not, on the solar, how much we've saved?
As
in
of
solar
last month,
farming?
it was $29,000.
So are they gonna send out monthly reports or just every 6 months or every?
I don't know.
Was
We
it
got-
that
we got a report
29,000
last-
just for this year, or because it started in 2017 and then there was all those screw-ups with them?
Well, Doug seems to think it's gonna reach the budget amount that we had in the budget.
Okay, that's what my
But
concern
at this
was.
point, it's about $30,000 as of last month. This kind of weather, it ought to be really cooking it out, so.
29,000 was the aggregate saved, so.
Right.
This year, calendar year?
Yes.
So then last year, nothing?
I don't know about last year, because I don't know when it came online, really, I can't remember. Because there was a lot of issues there.
There was, they were billing us for what we were giving them.
It's
not quite so effective.
That was corrected quite quickly. But, he's referring to this year, we budgeted 30, you saying?
No, I think, we budgeted 65, I think.
Okay.
But we're at about 30 now.
And it's only June, through
Right.
June, probably not even. In the summer months are when you're gonna get your highest usage, highest return, I mean.
I just wondered for Keith or and the rest of SWEC with the I know Karen's trying to do outreach on getting recyclables cleaned, but ultimately is that the real? I mean, it's a bigger market issue, right? I mean,
It's a global market.
So there's no. I mean, it's month to month, obviously, but I mean, do we see it getting worse or do we see it getting
Unpredictable.
complete?
And I would say, Karen, I don't know if she just sent it to SWEC or if she sent it to all of us, but in the most recent NISAC counties in the news, if you scroll down to, I think, Finger Lakes, there's a very extensive story about the recycling market and what's happened to it, what the regional impacts are. And in that article, it seemed to think that the only way that we'll be able to find a market moving forward is to emphasize cleaning, a cleaner product. They were finding some problems with the single stream idea, so.
So separation, going back to separating.
That was something that was raised in that story. Also, just having cleaner recyclables was raised in that. It was a news story.
And you can imagine how hard that's gonna be, because we're not talking about whether I can get that last molecule of juice out of the bottom of it. We're talking about people who finish the half of the peanut butter jar and they throw it in the recyclables, Those are not the kind of people who are gonna now start cleaning out better, So it's really, it's gonna be difficult, and how the Chinese respond to that, it is unpredictable at this point. We don't know.
But I will say that from what I've read, it sounds as if this isn't a blip like that has happened in the past, and that a market will soon be found, a better market, or bottom, it will recover. It sounds like a bigger issue than that.
I think that the recycling facilities in China have waste products, the waste products being what we...
2 transfer stations, because there's a lot of damage being done in the southern with and sometimes it makes you wonder if we should be paying for that or they should be paying for that, so. You get a chance, look at the
Casella you're
contract.
talking about.
Pardon me?
Casella paying for that damage that they're doing, or?
Well, they're supposed to be, but we gotta make sure it's in the contract, you know, because what's happened, I don't know if the hole's been fixed yet?
I haven't been back, I don't know.
Okay.
That contract's coming up, right?
Yeah, that's why we're gonna start it, in August.
Right, but have the bid proposals gone out yet?
No, we're gonna start going over the contract.
I think that one of the issues with that was when you're trying to describe generally who's responsible for what, there always are those issues that come up that one side argues, no, that's you, and we say that's them. So anything like that that has come up, I mean, that should definitely probably go through Karen first. She'll collect it all, and then Karen and I will go over it, and we'll decide, you know, if it's pretty clear cut that they're just saying that we should pay for it without any basis, or whether we do need to correct that going forward. And we would need to correct that before the bid goes out, because we want to make that one of the terms. So anything that's really bothering us now about how that contract is working out, I mean, definitely send that to Karen.
And I just came and remembered about some of the repairs down there that they wanted the highway or building service to do, was in the recycling building, the floor, that it's been gone, and, you know, where they asked Bobcat, or wherever they do the load recyclables, and they wanted us to kind of fix that floor so it was a smoother area, so that was what that was about. And the push wall, I forgot about that too, something about the push wall was moving. They had to, I don't know if they went out for bids for that, or we did, for our contractor to fix that.
I think we did. There were several things that we ended up repairing.
There's a few issues there.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you. Admin, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The admin committee met, suddenly don't remember the day, but I didn't write it down. We had many county department heads come through, starting with Rich Brimmer. We approved radios for highway. We also approved for Tammy McDonald to attend the National Conference on Aging. And we also approved Carol to purchase the podium that is in our board, in our meeting room. Also, Carol provided us with material that he will be voting on in resolution number 198, standard workday for the retirement system for New York State. Also, we had Rob O'Brien, cameras for the towers. We had our previously discussed $500 for the Cooperstown Lions Club, resolution number 203. We approved the disbursements for the youth program, resolution number 204 today. Mr. Zerkes came to discuss change in county policy on smoking, and we had to amend the policy for the use of e-cigarettes and vaping, and that is in resolution 199 today. Also discussed the create, fund, and fill the part-time caseworker for the Department of Social Services, resolution number 202. The exemption for residency for a corrections officer, resolution number 197. Resolution also previously discussed in Ed's report on the salary for the public defender, resolution number 200. And transfer of funds from, in resolution number 205. One of the things that we're going to be further discussing is policies in general and reworking, just giving them a look. If they need serious revision, revising, Gary has identified them and sent the major ones to the committees where they would be living and deciding those kinds of, if they need revision, if they're good as is, and we'll be reviewing them in the months to come. And also we had resolution number 196, the induction weekend parking policy, listing DSS as the recipient of the funds and the $20 per vehicle fee. That's pretty much what we did. Our next meeting is July 23rd at 1 p.m. And if you have any questions, I will take them.
Just going into a little detail about the policies. Sent the same thing out to everybody, and I'm hoping I'm expecting, I guess, the appropriate committee chairs will pull out the policy categories that are theirs, work with their department heads to look at them to see if they're appropriate, to change them when they're not, send them back. And you'll also be getting another communication from me in the next month or so as I go through all of the miscellaneous categories and sort each one of the policies out and send them out. It looked like there was a point where they just threw them all into these miscellaneous categories, and so they're all mixed up. So I'll be sending that out as well. Big job, love to have it done by the end of this calendar year, but nobody's got a deadline on us for that. That's just my goal.
I really support this resolution 201 about amending, having the exemption for the sheriff's department to fill vacant funded positions without parent committee approval. And I guess that's more in relation to their mandates that they have to fill them quickly. But I was just wondering if you talked about that for everybody. Because it seems to be if it's vacant funded, I mean, could everybody do that, or, I mean, did you go that far in the discussions when
Well, the discussion, I think for the other departments had gotten to the point where it was going to just be department.
Yeah, I think that we did in the previous month, like in a different meeting we did.
Okay.
This one was something that had been passed through public safety a number of months ago, or whenever. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline was, but not brought forward to admin for whatever reason, so we were catching it up at admin. But at the other time, we did discuss for the other department heads. I'm fairly sure that we did.
So this doesn't require anything other than the personnel officer and the treasurer signing that form? Correct. It doesn't require a phone call to the chair?
No, in our other discussion, we had.
I know we had that discussion. Yeah, so.
We in the past had positions like the corrections officer positions over at the manor, and they used to do the same thing because you had to have a certain number of LPNs, et cetera, and that's kind of what happens at the correctional facility as well. We can't have those vacant. Not to say that that's the only policy to do it, but that's the reason.
The same one's in place for dispatch, for 911.
Right.
This is a different topic. I'm just wanting to find out if we have any updates on the health insurance consortium. Is that moving forward? Have we heard from initially Len Carson was spearheading that, working with the treasurer.
I have not heard anything further on it.
Take the lead on that. I haven't heard anything from him lately.
I think Alan is still working on it.
Okay, and that would be an admin.
It would eventually come to there through the treasurer.
Okay. I'll talk with Ellen.
Alan would be the best one.
Anything else?
It's should say our next meeting, July 23rd.
Special committees, Representative Frazier, negotiations.
Oh, actually, excuse me, we did have a budget meeting, very brief.
That would be,
Are you gonna do that as a separate one?
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
do that as
all right.
special committee, I guess. Representative Frazier.
We are tentatively scheduled for mediation on July 23rd. Was the last party.
We can skip right to budget then, if there's no
Oh.
questions.
Well, the budget meeting was very short. We had it prior to the admin meeting. But Alan did go over some of the historical numbers with regards to the budgets and how they've been looking. He's had an intern pulling numbers and crunching data, but it wasn't really in a workable, readable form for us, that he is going to be providing for a look back, I think, 5 years. Also, the budget tool is opening, well, yesterday, July 3rd through the 27th, for the department heads to start inputting budget numbers. We just had a very general discussion with regards to IT, which will be still entering the personal service line, and also a big difference is that the IT costs are going to be aggregated in this budget year coming up, 2019, whereas previously they've been appearing as a line item within each department. So we did discuss how we're going to keep the aggregation number and also keep it so we can compare it as an apples to apples comparison to previous years and previous departments. So it could get a little complicated, but it shouldn't be beyond our grasp. That's pretty much, we do have a budget meeting scheduled for 1 p.m. July 26th.
Thank you. Just for purposes of clarification, the budget workshops, these committee weeks are workshops, they're non-voting. They make recommendations, but they don't have the authority to vote.
Means we don't need a quota.
There's
No,
quorum.
and
Quorum, correct.
that's, yeah, so we have a lot of, anyone can come.
Anything else for Representative Kennedy on that? Performance review and goal setting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Met on June 12th. We're pretty settled on a recommendation to admin is where we'll take it. And we discussed this in admin this month, of M&C raises being 1.5% for department heads, up to 3% given the quality of their performance reviews. So 1.5 is set, and then they can increase it in increments depending on the how their performance review is. The performance review will be based on goals as much as anything, and setting and achieving goals within the department. Non-department head M&Cs will mirror CSEA. We are, our next meeting is right after this one, since this is the day after the board meeting, except it's not. And we will be looking at 2 responses we got to our RFP for training and goal setting. And they're both pretty interesting, but they're, one's $3,200 and I think one's not to exceed $3,700. And given that we budgeted $50,000 for this process, I think we're doing pretty well. We still have questions, which I've asked and have been answered, thank you, about the electeds and how to deal with them, and we'll be integrating them in the plan as well.
Any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, then the big thing is that I've asked Alan and Andrew to work up a ballpark figure regarding what all this might cost. in 2019 anyway, so that we can integrate that into our budget discussions.
Strategic planning, telecommunications.
We actually just met on Monday, was that? And we basically we reviewed. We're putting these work plans together. We met with Doug and Bill previously, and taking their feedback, have created a kind of a draft work plan that I'm actually going to attend Public Works committee meeting coming up and this month and go back over that work plan and try to get their feedback to better refine it and revise it. And we actually are, as a next step, talked about Karen Sullivan coming to the next strategic planning committee meeting, which we have scheduled for July 30th at 9 a.m. And we are looking at SWEC because Keith is on strategic planning. Keith is chairing SWEC and having a discussion kind of with Keith and Karen about the same idea. The ultimate goal here is to create these work plans for each committee, and it's a combination of the strategic planning, or I'm sorry, the Otsego County strategic plan components, and then the more specific kind of activities, a little bit bigger picture, not all operational, but trying to put these into work plans. And we talked a little bit at our committee meeting about the value of these work plans. So with the election coming up next year and the committee's bound to change somehow, that we would at least have some kind of planning document for each committee that would be great orientation for new board members, new chairs, and kind of continue the momentum that we've had or starting to kind of work on. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Land Bank?
Land Bank, we met the 7th of June in Mohawk at the office of the MVED office is where we meet. We are in the process of renting space in the Adirondack Bank building in Herkimer. That space is not ready yet. I think it's Herkimer. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the exact town and I'm not 100% sure. But we are looking to rent our own space. That things are moving along. They have a lot of properties that their project engineer has been looking at. And then the highlight of the meeting, we did the meeting before accept 20 Lake Street, and then we did send the resolutions and deeds documents to Ellen. I think Tolga sent them to you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had them
Okay.
already, actually, and
Okay,
that's
so-
what we used
Okay,
already,
just
so, but
to-
that was fine, that
Okay,
was fine.
wasn't really
So it's
sure.
been transferred now?
It hasn't been transferred, we were waiting for an answer to a particular question,
And
which I
then
think we got.
yes.
So we're
yeah.
just gonna go ahead with the transfer.
Yeah, so hopefully the transfer will be at the next meeting of our board. Would that be?
When does your
correct?
board meet?
Oh, our board meets tomorrow, on the 9th, Monday the 9th.
I could possibly get it done by then.
Okay, it's
I've
in
got-
the morning.
Everything else is done, the resolution is authorizing it, it's just, I had a question about the deed, and so that's been answered, so I just
Okay.
didn't have the chair sign the deed yet, but we're ready
Okay,
to go.
yeah, that meeting is at 11 a.m. on the 9th.
Okay.
Yeah. I have the great thrill of
It
chair.
seems I'm getting some correspondence, they're moving forward perhaps with the Cherry Valley property.
I can follow up with that on Monday when we have
I
that
got some,
meeting.
the Village of Cherry Valley attorney
Oh,
saying that.
yeah, we get monthly updates on all the projects that have come to their attention. And I've had a lot of questions, actually, just at the Milford Town meeting, they heard about the land bank and then they were suddenly very interested in how to get properties into it and what is the process. And the foreclosure piece of it is kind of a big entryway into the process, which you don't really want to be in. But, so anyway, there's a lot of educating to do within the county about how properties go there, so.
What's the project, Trevor, is that the burn building?
Yes.
There's no way that the county can go in there and clean that up?
I don't know if there's a way or not, but if it goes to the land bank, they'll do it.
I know, but it's sat there for what, been here 2 years now. I mean, we own a $200,000 excavator and, we have.
My understanding, the issue is the environmental concerns with the cleanup.
Environmental concerns ought to have been taken care of when it burned. That's my opinion anyway, I mean.
But there's some issue with it being disposed, apparently there's some toxic things there that need to be taken care of.
Which property is this?
This is,
Right next to the
right
bank.
next to the bank, kind of across the street, Lancaster Street.
Right next to Rose and Kettle.
That's not the same one though that we were just talking about.
The email that I was just
Yeah.
sharing, yes.
That is that one. Okay.
If I could go back to my report on PRGS, it just occurred to me that we'll be choosing a consultant to provide goals training. We're a committee that doesn't have a vote, essentially. What's the proper process to do that? Do we need to bring it to another committee and have that?
Probably bring it to admin, I would think. Is that correct or not?
Did we, these are still the
Special
old
committees.
ones that we have. Right.
That didn't change, though, the performance review goals did not change.
Did not change. Hang on a minute, I'll have the answer for you. I didn't go on.
My recollection is it just gets forwarded to admin.
Okay, I just want to make sure we did it right. So it'd be a recommendation to have the admin vote on it.
Right, that's my belief, so.
That makes sense.
I may well be corrected. Anything else? Anybody else have any committees they want to report on? Andrew?
I've been forwarding everyone the Otsego Now information. The main thing that the board meeting was on the 28th, and the main topic there, if you looked at the board agenda, I mean, there's ongoing updates, like the airport RFP, you know, that closed, I think has closed by now, so there'll be an update coming on that soon. But the Otsego school, there was a resolution that was being considered for Otsego Now to put in a possible bid, you know, on the Otsego school, but no action was taken. So, you know, at this point, the bid process closed for the Otsego school, and the Otsego Now is not making any proposal for it, so, at this point.
You still have a vacancy, it's been 2 months now.
Yep, we still
Only
have a
received 2
vacancy.
names so far, 3 actually, and one has declined. So it's only 2 names out there, which all of you already have. We'll probably move forward, getting a little bit more background information on one of those 2, or both of them, just submit.
Would it make any sense for them to come to IGA and have an interview or something? Or is that too much?
It traditionally has not been the process, it's
Yeah.
a chair appointment, so
Right.
they just have been
Okay.
made by the chair. So there's been talk over the past 2 years of broadening out that scope of, you know, who makes the decision, or, you know, it's ultimately a board chair's appointment. So we have not gone any deeper than what we have.
In the past, we were forwarded like the resumes and information, and then we would reach out to them on our own and talk to them, or, you know, basically interview them
Right.
independently.
Right. Andrew, I have a question about the airport RFP. Do you have any idea when they're gonna get together to go over those, because that closed on the 28th?
The IDA has 2 meetings each month.
Okay.
One is like a combined audit, finance, and special projects meeting, and it would be at that special projects meeting.
Okay, so do you think the full board is going to be looking at that, or what?
Typically, the full board is invited to go to the special
Oh, so
projects
it's
meeting.
there's a committee that does that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, honestly, it's pretty much anyone that shows up for the special projects committee.
Okay.
And then at the full board meeting, which is at the end of the month, they would, I'm guessing, you know, I don't know how quickly, I'm guessing that it's quite possible the RP could be awarded by the end of the month.
Right, well, so my concern about that is, since you brought up at our last IGA meeting that they would like us to contribute to that study, there's already $45,000 that they have a grant for. And I guess my concern about that is, we haven't even made a decision if we're giving them the money and they're gonna like look
No,
at the
it-
proposals, I mean.
It was just an idea, just like
Yeah.
a lot of the other ones, so
Okay, well-
it's not gonna hold up the RFP process. so
Well,
they-
no, so what, I guess my concern is kind of like if the county does participate in that, if you look at the RFP, I mean, it's to study the possibility of doing development up there for economic purposes and also for Otsego now to decide if that's a good fit for them to take that over. My thinking is if the county was gonna participate by giving them money, we would wanna probably expand the scope of that just a little bit and say, or instead of just, is it okay, would it be viable for Otsego now to buy it, what are alternatives, including like a private public investment in the airport, cause it's kinda narrow, the scope of it right now is kinda narrow. And I'm just saying, if there's a chance we're gonna participate in it, I'd like them to like open that up a little bit, but I don't know, when they're gonna do it and cause we would still have money to give them money, I think, if in our.
We didn't allocate all the funds, right, in
Right,
IGA, yeah.
but I think we were concerned that we haven't really been approached by the city of Oneonta to become involved in this process. So it just seems like a time-sensitive thing, I'm just kind of bringing it
Yeah,
up
I
right
mean-
now.
I mean, again, just to clarify, this study is not whether Otsego now is gonna buy that airport, that is not.
Well, that's part of it.
Well,
It is, that's part of it, that's
I
part of
mean-
that is part of the study.
I don't think a study is gonna commit Otsego now to buying the Oneonta airport.
It'll help them make the decision.
Well, no, but I mean, that's what.
It's a
one of
due
the-
diligence.
That's one of the things that the study is supposed to
I mean, you-
explore.
Again, a feasibility study, it's gonna look at the components of the airport and what could be profitable, is it sustainable, is it meeting its operating costs? A study is not gonna commit Otsego now to buying
No,
that
I'm
airport.
not saying to commit it, but that's one of the things that the RP clearly states is in this proposal, is to determine whether or not this would be a good thing for the IDA to buy.
Right, because
I mean, that's
they're,
part of
they're
the-
being,
what the study is about.
right, they were asked to look at the airport
Right.
as a property transfer, basically for $1, right, yeah, and this was they're just doing the due diligence and looking
Right.
at the airport. And honestly, no one has ever done any kind of economic impact study on the airport ever.
Yeah, that's
So,
really hard to believe.
I mean, but it's true, so in the city, doesn't really have any of those statistics or information, so, I mean, this, I don't think, you're obviously not questioning the value of the study, but again, it was like the 15 other ideas that IGA's discussed, the airport study was just, another consideration, I do not think, if Jody was looking or felt that the study hinged on more money from Otsego County, he would have been here, he would have
Right.
communicated that to the entire board and to the IGA committee. It was just one other consideration for us to look at. So, I think, you already know, the study's already, it was launched, they have the money they have, and, if Jody and wants more money for that study, then he would have to come and have more of a discussion with the IGA.
Right.
And I don't know if he's planning to do that or not, so I think they're gonna move forward with what money they have and do the study that they put in that RFP for now.
Okay.
Okay, unless someone has something else, we'll move forward with the consent agenda. Item 197 has been pulled, resolution 197. Is there any others that like to be pulled?
196.
Any others? Okay. A motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Prior to that, we need a motion to dispense with the reading.
So moved.
Right.
That didn't take long.
We got a couple of them. Did you catch all those?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passed. Now we'll move forward with the consent agenda.
Frazier?
Aye.
Farwell?
Aye.
Clark? Aye. Stammel?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Overrecker? Bliss?
Aye.
Marietta?
Yes.
Cardy?
Aye.
Wilbur? Pottnick?
Aye.
Martini? Lappin? Shannon?
Aye.
4,859 ayes, 0 noes, 1,369 absent. Consent agenda is passed. Resolution 196.
Resolution 196, authorizing parking charge for Otsego County lots for July 28, 2018, Overrecker, McCarty, Wilbur, Farwell, Lappin.
Second.
Second. Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did pull this. I still do have questions about it. I know we've asked some of these questions before, but I still do have them about one is about the liability issue of, now that we're inviting these folks onto the property. The other one is just sort of about, I guess you'd call it internal controls. So we're collecting all this money and we're acting as, or whoever the volunteers are, and I'm concerned about that. It doesn't really define who the volunteers are. They're sort of acting as agents for county government, collecting this money. How do we keep track of the money? Do we have to kind of say where it's coming from and monitor what happens with it? So just questions about that. And then the last one for me is just sort of, there's no exemption for county residents in this resolution. And the parking lot is a resource of the counties, but it doesn't belong to the government. I mean, it belongs to the people of the county, and I feel like if we are collecting money for usage, I feel like, our taxpayers have already paid to create these lots. I think they should be exempted from that fee. Those are my thoughts.
Well, the last one first, I think if we exempt Otsego County residents, that's the last time we'll ever do it. Because next year, all the Otsego County residents will know they can park free in our lots, and we'll stand out there and fill it with non-paying customers. The first one, the liability, I think we talked about this last time, that people are gonna park there anyway, whether we're there or not, and the liability is the same.
And the internal control.
Internal control.
Keeping track of money.
DSS does fundraisers. They do raise funds for exactly these programs themselves. I'm not familiar with what their internal controls are, but I'll certainly be responsible for everything that happens there. I'd be very happy to consider any further organization or specific improvements to that that anybody might suggest. We'll have lock boxes for the money.
Meg was first.
I would just suggest a receipt book, that would be one
I was
thing.
gonna say a parking ticket, you put it on your dash of your car, if you give out 100 of them, you
But the
should have-
receipt book, as far as internal controls go, you have a receipt book with 50 pages and each one shows that you collected $20 on it, then you would have $1,000 and you would be able to account for each transaction. That's just a thought.
If you have duplicate receipts, then the receipt you give the customer could be their parking ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that we're gonna go around and ticket cars that don't have
The
the money.
volunteers, my understanding, the volunteers would all be county employees.
And Andrew and I.
Oh, and I did have a part two to mine.
Right.
Part two of my comment was, would we be providing signage to say where the money was intended to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
Anything else?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, it would seem, that two things, we just have the treasurer's office kind of just weigh in very quickly, and I mean, it seems like we could just simply, Gary could send a quick email out saying exactly, hey, here's how the money will be handled, like a cash box this much, we'll have this much for change in the beginning, and, and figure out with the treasurer's office how it gets deposited at the end of the day, so no one's holding on to that money. Just simple checks and balances, and we can have it emailed out to everyone before this event actually happens.
Monday, it's a weekend, so nobody banks open.
Yeah, by Monday.
Well, but they're, the county must have some Dropbox of some sort, right? Somewhere? No? Carol!
Maybe not.
Safe
I
Dropbox.
mean, there's petty cash, there's a lot of places that collect cash around the county.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can talk to one of the local banks or something and figure something out where that money can get held.
What bank do we have our local account?
I don't know.
You leave your checkbook with us overnight and you can take the cash home and bring it back the next day. Jeez, I mean, come on, guys.
Well, so I'm not gonna ask for a formal straw poll, but I'm just wondering, is there any thoughts on that residency requirement if I made a motion to amend this, or that's not anything that's resonating with folks here?
Well, it does resonate with me.
Or I would, yeah, of the 3 points, that was the one that I felt, I see your point, and then I thought about how, for example, the Westcott lot in Oneonta, now it's free, but it used to have a charge. I mean, there's all sorts of precedents for, or government-owned property to charge. And if it were something where we were charging on a normal day, I would definitely object to that, but it seems like this is a special case that most of the residents aren't going to be from Otsego County, and that it would be next to impossible to try to sort those out and say, if you're from Otsego County, it's free, and if you're not. So while it does raise some concerns for me, not enough to not vote for it.
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that might not even be legal, because it still is public, not county. It's like when the village had their permit parking system, they originally were gonna have it be free for village residents, and they found out they couldn't do that, so they ended up with the $25 year-round parking sticker, restrict that to only village residents, which they also found out they couldn't do. So any tourist can come in and buy a $25 parking ticket for their car if they're gonna be here long enough to think it's worthwhile. So it may actually not even be legal to do that.
Have you looked at that, Ellen? So, 2 points, under section 215 of the county law, it actually specifically talks about parking lots, and you can charge to use them. So that's no problem. But on the other point about whether you can restrict such a benefit to only county residents, in general, you can't do that. Albany had a big to-do over that as well a number of years ago. They have a terrible parking problem downtown, and they were trying to do that. In other states, it's permitted. We've probably all visited places where they say that, but not in New York. I just, as a caveat, I haven't looked at this issue in probably at least 15 years. So if you do want me to look into that, I will. I will look into it to confirm that that's still the situation.
Well, at least a few years ago, when the village started parking, it was an issue they had to address at the time. Because they were gonna limit the parking permits to village and county residents only, and they found out they couldn't.
Yeah, the only difference here is this is like a one-shot deal, $20 for one day, and it's not really
Right.
but it's most likely the same.
I was just gonna say, I mean, the only issue, I mean, I think it's it makes sense. I mean, it is the right thought, but it logistically too, I'm just thinking we're literally gonna have to card people coming into that parking lot, and are they really gonna show us their IDs? I mean, who are we, to ask for a valid form of ID to show me where you live? I mean, it could really be a very, I mean, it could become an ugly situation if somebody's like, I live here in the county, but I'm not gonna show you my ID. Well, what do you, right.
And there's gonna be people who have dual residency, they have a house here and live in Florida.
I'm just thinking of the volunteers down there, it kind of creates more burden on them, for sure.
And Gary's point is, if people find out that Otsego's residence free, it's negate the whole process.
But they're already parking here
Well,
anyway. They already think it's free.
Right. No, I meant Otsego County residents would fill it up, and we wouldn't be able to sell any spaces because it would be full of
Who
locals,
would fill it
which
up
is
are the
okay.
people that are working down in the village.
Right.
They'll fill it up first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. And they probably are a lot of the ones that are already parking here, some of them.
Some of them
Anyway,
actually
any more
get
discussion?
ticketed when they park in the lot down near the courthouse. my niece works at Mel's. She said sometimes people, if the village thinks that you're parking in the county parking lot to escape parking on the street and paying, they've ticketed some of her coworkers. So just to throw that out there. I don't.
How do they know that?
I don't know, but she said that it happened. Because I was digging into it with her to see how this might affect, you know, the people who worked in the businesses downtown. She said they already are getting hit up for that.
Okay, is there anything new to add here?
Another thing is, I had the same concerns as you did, but I said I'd try it for a year.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. It's a parking pilot.
Good, that's the spirit in which we're doing it. It's an experimental program. We can do it or not, we can double it or not, you know, whatever, however it turns out.
Crossing the aisle.
I think we're ready to vote.
Fraser?
Aye.
Farwell? Aye. Clark? Aye. Stammel?
No.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Overacker? Bliss?
Yes.
Marietta?
Yes.
McCarty?
Aye.
Wilbur? Kotnick?
Aye.
Martini? Lappin? Shannon?
Aye.
4,336 ayes, 523 noes, 1,369 absent. Resolution 196 passes.
Resolution 197, adopting a local law for the year 2018, a local law creating an exception to the residency requirement for correction officer, correction sergeant, and correction lieutenant. Kennedy, Overacker, Fraser, Kotnick, Stammel, McCarty.
Second.
Second.
I pulled it. For obvious reasons, I had to.
Any other discussion?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Kathy.
She's
I said I intend to abstain.
Oh, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Fraser,
Aye.
Farwell. Aye. Clark. Stammel.
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Overacker, Bliss,
Aye.
Marietta,
Yes.
McCarty,
Aye.
Wilbur, Kotnick,
Aye.
Martini, Lappin, Shannon.
Aye.
4,305 ayes, 0 noes, 1,369 absent, 554 abstained. Resolution 197 passed.
I just wanted to go back and answer Gary's question. And so under the bylaws and rules, the particular committee is an authorized special committee. So that committee can sponsor resolutions. Depending on the subject matter, for example, here, I think you're talking about the salaries and that issue, then
What I was specifically asking for was the RFP for the consultant to come in and train for
oh, okay.
goals training.
So then you just have to look under the admin, what they authorize, and just see if the committee also needs admin approval. But your committee can come forward with that, with that resolution on its own.
Okay.
It's only advisory committees that can't bring forward resolutions on their own. And then there was one other thing that I saw in the minutes about the process to get resolutions to the board. And I'm gonna send something out to everyone and to the department heads. But it is important that you on your committees and the department heads, just because something goes through the committee and it is approved, it still has to be a formal request to my office. We have a form you need to fill out. You need to put all this information in there that we need, for that to happen. So some department heads are better than others at doing that. If there's an issue that comes forward in a committee that really is not spearheaded by any particular department head, then you have to make sure that some person on that committee comes forward to my office and says, hey, we passed this in committee, we would like, we'd like to have a board resolution. And again, we have a form, and we're just trying to streamline the process. We used to have emails, phone calls back and forth. Now we're trying to collect all the information that we need, because we need things like budget line, like are you amending a previous resolution, or the sponsors, et cetera. Just answering those questions.
Just one on that, you said department heads, but you also mean other electeds like county clerk and treasurer.
Correct, yes, I'm sorry. Yep. And then if there's, like I said, if there's I think Danny Lappin sponsored something that wasn't any particular thing. He came to my office, we helped him fill out the form, just so that I know. Because sometimes, even though we read all of your minutes, it's a little unclear sometimes whether a department head brings something up just for general discussion, like, hey, let's get a sense of the committee, what you want to do, or no, this actually needs some formal action. So that's all, that helps us clarify it.
Okay, there are no late resolutions that I'm aware of. Any other unfinished business you need to address?
Oh, yes, there is. PRGS immediately followed.
Right.
Okay, take a break, get a drink of water.
I'm ready for
Okay,
my
motion to adjourn?
Oh, so moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Gary,